any one of them whenever you want. Got another shooting, in the Bronx. Just now, breaking news. Not done.
So I hope everyone likes the new and improved WebEx.
Mm-hmm.
It looks a little bit better than it has the past couple of months. I think you will all agree. So at this point, I'm just going to briefly state that we have 2 LPC items, 266 Brooklyn Avenue and 982 Sterling Place.
Correct.
So, and then after that, whoever that is, I wish they would mute their microphone so we can hear each other. Okay, I'm back. All right. So we have a some familiarity with the 2 LPC items, the 2 landmark items. So I am going to ask those 2 to go first, and we'll start with 266 Brooklyn Avenue as soon as we do a roll call and see that we have
You want to hear this or
so see that we have a quorum.
or you want to focus on what you have to do?
Yeah, we're going to
do
see.
that stuff for the community stuff.
Joel Teitelbaum is talking now. We're trying to get organized here. So we're going to see if we have a quorum, because for the 2 LPC items, we're going to take a vote. And we want to just step through those presentations and then move on to the ULURP items. So if the committee secretary is on the line, I would ask Ms. Islin, Kathy Islin, to proceed with calling the roll.
Thank you.
Islin? Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Albert Appleton, Lisa Atkinson. I believe Princess Ben James is excused. John Buchholz. Robert Callahan. Janet Collins.
Present.
Nora Daniel.
Did you hear me?
Yes, Ms. Collins, I heard you. Thank you.
Okay.
Nora Daniel. Kevin Farley. Johnny Cranville.
Present.
Thank you. Kathy Island, yes. Zarima Jordan.
Yes.
Peter, oh, Zarima Jordan.
Yes.
Thank you. Peter Crashes.
Yes.
Thank you. Sarah Lazore.
Yes.
Thank you. Mirelle Lemaine. Elaine Mahoney. Quasi Mensa. Fior Ortiz.
Present.
Thank you. Robert Puca. Celine Rosado. Adam Sachs. Meredith Staten.
I saw him on. I saw his name.
All right.
I'm looking again.
Meredith Staten.
He's usually on by phone. Yeah. Okay, scrolling over. Got 26 people on the call.
I'll keep going and we'll come back. Ethel Tias,
Okay.
yes.
Present.
Gib Vaconi. Yrsa Weatherspoon. Sharon Wedderburn. Elaine Weinstein is excused. Deborah Young. Ms. Tias, we have 8 members who are reporting themselves as present out of 27.
We don't have a quorum. So at this point, I would say we can start a discussion and then do roll call again before we take a vote. I would ask the representative for 266 Brooklyn Avenue to start their presentation, announcing their name and the main points of their presentation tonight.
Okay.
Madam Chair, this is Janet Collins. Point of information. If we go ahead and have a discussion and then people later on come in, they will have missed the information. How will they be able to vote effectively?
Okay, and you say that to say what?
Well, should we be proceeding?
We're going to use the time we have to hear the information that the applicant is presenting.
Okay, so then those people who are coming in later on will miss some of the information. And then
True.
how are they expected to vote? Make
These are, as I mentioned earlier, who's presenting for 266 Brooklyn Avenue?
This is Dennis George, the architect.
Okay,
I had presented the last time. In regards to 266, I guess the committee had seen this before, and the request the last time was to present mock-ups. So I could go through the presentation and the mock-ups. Maybe by that time, the other committee members will be here.
Ms. Tias, I would
Madam
like to
Chair?
say
I think
something.
that's what I'm questioning. The fact that
Right,
they would miss
right.
the presentation.
Well,
how
we have
they
one
make an
more.
informed vote.
Correct, but I'm wondering if you recall that we've seen both of these before?
Well,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, a few members have joined, so
I
perhaps we
see
may have a
that.
quorum now.
Thank you. I
Okay.
think Deborah Young is on now.
Yes, I am on, and I would like to say something. I want to say, first of all, that it's 6:22. And with all due respect, everybody knows our meetings start at 6:15. So it's really unfortunate for those who haven't joined in on time, and certainly they should hear the presentations. But if they can't get into the meeting on time when we're supposed to start, it's unfair to the applicants as well as those of us who've joined in to delay. So I think that we need to move forward, and those who come in late and miss the presentation will have to vote as best they can be, whatever that may be. And I hear your concern, and I don't discount it, Ms. Collins, but we just should not be keeping people waiting. I just don't think it's fair.
I agree with that also, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And what we can do to assuage Ms. Collins's feelings of disinformation or misinformation is ask the late arrivals if they have questions. That's the best we're going to be able to do. Thank you, Ms. Collins. We're going to let Mr. George proceed.
Okay.
Mr. George?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. This is Dennis George with George Architect. I'm the architect for 266 Brooklyn Avenue within the Crown Heights district. As I presented the last time, and just to recap where we left off, the committee requests mock-ups for the garage, the rooftop addition, or the bulkhead addition, and the pergolas. So with that, I'll just go through the presentation I gave last time, and I have a few more additions and clarifications that I could, I guess, share with you.
Are you going to share your screen now?
Yes, I could share my screen. Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Let me just page. Okay. So let's go to the next page. Hold a second. Okay, so the scope of work for the project is a proposed 2-car garage and a curb cut. We're also proposing window and masonry opens at the rear facade on the 3rd and 4th floor. There's a proposed metal balcony at the rear 3rd floor, a Juliet balcony, which we are restoring at the front facade on Brooklyn Avenue, which was previously approved at the staff level, except that we want a change of material to fiberglass. There's a proposed enlarged stair bulkhead at the main roof, proposed pergola on the 3rd floor and the main roof, proposed cornice, which was approved at the staff level, but we also changed in the brackets to fiberglass. And at the rear, there is a parapet, which we are raising to match the street facade at the rear. And then there's replacement windows, which we're proposing metal-clad wood windows and doors. So these are tax photos from the 1940s, 80s, and the present-day photograph taken on Brooklyn Avenue and Lincoln Place. This is just a larger shot of the last present day. And the thing, the last presentation, there was questions about the restoration aspect of this project. So I'll walk through just some of the remediation items that's currently ongoing, which was approved at the staff level. This is a photo from 1915, and it shows the cornice and I guess with the parapet at the top. And before, I guess, all these buildings in a row had cornices, and now they're missing. It also shows the Juliet balcony, which is missing, and I think it's missing on all the buildings, through St. John's. The district map and aerial view photo of the property of the block, and it shows just I guess where our building is. This is a block plan, and it shows the site views, which I'll show you following this one. So we have a view from Brooklyn Avenue and Lincoln Place. On Lincoln Place, which views of the garage, and a view taken from Eastern Parkway, just to show you what is visible from the mock-ups. And I'll cross over this. So this is from, I guess, Brooklyn Avenue and Lincoln Place, and I guess this shows actually the present day and shows the parapet which we're replacing, and most of the brick remediation work. This shows, I guess, it's very distant. You could get a glimpse of just the parapet at this distance from Eastern Parkway. These are existing photos taken at the roof level. This is looking towards the rear of the building. That's looking towards the adjacent, I guess, looking north towards alongside Brooklyn Avenue towards the church. That's looking at Brooklyn Avenue east. And that's a shot of the rear facade, which we're doing significant work. So it shows, I guess, deterioration of the brick. And actually, this wall has significant amount of cracks in it, which I'll show you on another drawing. This facade, I guess, structure at the rear is 3 stories, and then there's a setback at that 4th floor level, which contains a terrace. The current work that's going on is the brick remediation work and the interior structural brick repair. And currently the building has, scaffolding throughout while the work is ongoing. Current work that is taking place is, I'm not sure if you can see the red line. So the parapet has been demolished, and we're in the process of rebuilding that up again. That's taken at Lincoln Place, showing the mock-ups for the garage. Let's show, I could zoom in so you could get a better view of this. So it shows the shared driveway to the whole block, and it shows, I guess, this would be, I guess, the extent and height of the garage. We are replacing and restoring, well, actually modifying the brick wall to include the garage doors, 2 garage doors here, and there will be a curb cut into the garage. And this shows the pergola at the roof level, and you can see the red line. That's the line of the parapet, and the idea, it shows that we won't, from across the street, we will not be able to see the pergola, so that won't be visible. This also shows, I guess, a sight line of, I guess, the pergola and the extended bulkhead, which would not be visible from the street, both on Brooklyn Avenue and also diagonally across at the intersection of Brooklyn Avenue and Lincoln Place. At the rear terrace setback, we have a pergola. So I'm just showing the mock-ups for that. And, this is looking towards north, towards the, I guess, St. John's, and that's looking, I guess, adjacent at Lincoln Place. That's the bulkhead. There's an existing bulkhead, and we're extending that, almost 9 feet forward towards Brooklyn Avenue, and that's the pergola. Just gives you an idea of just the extent of the pergola.
I'm sorry, Mr. George.
Yeah.
The earlier photographs were pretty small on my screen. What
Okay.
I had hoped to see from the wooden mock-ups would be the view from across the street. not
Okay.
not at the fixture on the roof. That is the purpose of this exam.
Okay.
Is yes, these photos, but it's
Okay.
hard to see with the netting there.
Yeah,
The
it's
netting
hard to
has-
see with the net in, but I could zoom in. Would that be okay?
I
Yeah.
don't think that serves the purpose. We wanted to see the mock-up from the perspective of the sight line across the street with the netting there, and that orange ribbon on the netting is very difficult to see what you're trying to show here. Could you?
Right. Well, construction is ongoing, and we just built the mock-ups a few weeks back, and they, as part of the DOB safety requirement, the netting needs to stay up. But I could zoom in, closer to show you that that's the line. I guess you could see the wooden portion. So that's the lines of the pergola, which happens
Okay.
behind. It happens behind the parapet, so it will not be visible from across the street.
All right. So what you're saying is those red lines will be the
That's
new
no, that's this will be we took these lines as the existing parapet, which was demolished 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So we're just constructing just for the photograph, for the purposes of this meeting, to show that the extension of that parapet, which is in line with the rest of the building,
Okay.
and that the bulkhead and the pergola will not be visible.
Okay. So but we're not able to see the mock-up of the pergola and the bulkhead through the netting. Is it there? Can you point that out?
Yes. Okay, let's see. So right here is the extent from this point to this point is the extent of the pergola. I don't know if you could see the structure of the pergola. So this is the top of the parapet. So, and then there'll be the wall in front. So everything happened behind it will not be visible from the street, from across the street. Okay, and the stair bulkhead is not even visible because it's further back from the parapet.
So though the wooden mock-ups are not painted in orange so that we could see them here. Does anyone have questions on this? I thought the purpose was to see if the proposed constructs would be visible from across the street.
I don't see them. I don't see the pergola.
Let's see. So do you see the light? It's like a yellowish wood.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's what it is. So this will be the red line is the top of the.
You said that. I got it. So it had that wooden, the wooden mock-ups been painted orange, it would have been a slam dunk. We'd be done by now.
Right. Well, I'm so sorry about this, but if I could, let's go back to. You see, so okay, so this is what I guess the pergola would look like. So basically, you're seeing these vertical lines, in the previous photo.
Okay.
And then the netting is only for the enclosed space, which is the stair bulkhead. So, does that everyone on board with this?
No, we're not.
Oh no.
You can't tell from the
Yeah,
question.
no, I'm not either. I can't tell anything.
Right. Okay. Well, that's because the bulkhead is further back, so that you will not be even be able to see it from the street.
Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
You're saying that it's not visual from across the street. What is the view from Eastern Parkway if you're looking at the property? Are you able to see the pergola and the bulkhead?
You get a slight glimpse of it, but not quite. Let's see if I could find. Oops.
I'm surprised that LPC's instructions don't suggest painting mock-ups a bright orange for the purposes of this type of review.
Right. So this is from Eastern Parkway, and the bulkhead and the would be concealed behind the chimney. Not sure if you could see it.
That's
So-
it's very difficult to imagine because I can't see the mock-up from that photo from Eastern Parkway.
Right. So this is the existing bulkhead. So the new bulkhead is hidden behind the chimney.
What about the pergola?
The pergola would be slightly visible in front. But it's taken from, let's see, 400 feet away.
Okay, I have a question in the chat. Please confirm the height of the pergola and the height of the parapet. Is the pergola higher than the parapet? And what's the height of the garage roof?
Okay, the parapet, let's see, the parapet is 36 inches high, 3'6", 42 inches high above the roof level, and the pergola is 7.5 feet high above the floor or the roof level.
That's not answering the question.
This is Kathy Islam. The question was mine because surely one will see the pergola over the parapet because the parapet is 42 inches and the pergola is 7.5 feet. So you'll definitely see the pergola. That's
Yes,
that's the question. And once it's going to have plantings on it, right? I would assume they're planting wisteria or something is climbing on it. So you'll see a green you'll see
Yes,
a
you
pergola
would.
on the roof because it's tall. It's 7.5 feet tall, which is
Right.
not really
So-
represented in the mock-up.
Right, so you would see it from Eastern Parkway, but right at the, across the street, you will not be able to see it. And let me go back to those photos. Okay, so this is a photo on Lincoln Place, looking at the rear of the building, and that's the rooftop. And so you could see that the parapet is, in front of the pergola, which happens behind it. So from this standpoint, from both diagonally further into Lincoln Place and also directly across the street, which is this photo, you will not be able to see the pergola.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. George. I'll take one or two final questions and then we'll do another roll call to confirm we have a quorum and ask for a motion.
Okay.
Any questions, one or two questions for Mr. George, and then we're done with the discussion presentation?
This is Peter Crashes. I have a question about the garage. This is something I've raised before the last meeting. This is just coming from personal perspective. I don't understand why we are allowing the curb cut to be extended, essentially taking public space on the sidewalk and privatizing it, and adding what I think, in order to add significant value to the property for anyone who lives inside, because they want to have a private garage.
Well, I took just a survey of properties around the neighborhood. This is on Revere Place and Bergen Street, and that has a garage with an addition, corner property. Also on 119 Brooklyn Avenue, the same thing, that also has a garage. So it's a typical, and also across the street, there is a rooftop garden, a garage with an occupiable rooftop at this property. So just in terms of precedent, we were following something which is typical in the neighborhood, and we felt that these precedents support the existence of that.
I appreciate that, but I think what my perspective is that the precedent of the committee is generally to look at the historic conditions of the site, which don't include a garage, and the historic condition seems to be a masonry fence and a back driveway to several buildings, including the same building. That's a
Right.
kind of historic pattern. I don't know why we would allow that pattern to depart from precedent and instead allow the public sidewalk to be reduced, which is essentially what we were doing in order to create a private parking garage for people that, when we honestly shouldn't be making it easier for people to park.
Right. I don't, I get what you're saying. Not sure if I could. Well, that's the purpose of this proposal, is to, obtain your support for the garage and other aspects of the project. It's a request by the client, and it's just, from my point, from what I see, it seems to be a precedent that's typical in the neighborhood.
Well, I'd like to say, I think you just showed us what, 2 or 4 different places in the neighborhood. I wouldn't call that a precedent.
I can hear your question. Say it again.
Yeah, did you show us 4 other places in the neighborhood that have the same garage? Was it 4 or is it 2? I was just seeing one screen.
Oh, okay. I showed 3.
3.
Across the street on Lincoln Place, and on 119 Brooklyn Avenue, and let's see if I could find the other one. Let's see, 23 Revere Place. So
that's not our neighborhood.
Sorry.
Okay, well, I wouldn't think that's setting a precedent, though. Like, just a few out of all the houses in the neighborhood have that same garage
Well,
configuration.
Yeah, it's somewhat of a general precedent. A corner property with a garage. So all these properties have curb cuts, and obviously they were approved before the district became landmarked.
Correct. And that is the point.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much for your very probing and insightful questions. At this point, I would ask for a redo on the roll call so we have confirmation that we have a quorum, and then I will ask for a motion on this item. And we'll take a vote based on that we have a quorum. We need to call the roll again, Ms. Island?
Yes. Albert Appleton. Lisa Atkinson.
Present.
Thank you. Princess Ben James is excused. John Buckholtz. John Buckholtz. Robert Callahan.
I'm here.
Thank you. Janet Collins.
Present.
Thank you. Nora Daniel. Nora Daniel. Thank you. Kevin Farley.
Here, present.
Thank you. Johnny Granville. Miss Granville. She answered last time that she was here.
She's speaking, but I think she's muted.
Yes.
Thank you. Kathy Island. Zarima Jordan.
Here.
Thank you. Peter Crashus.
Here.
Sarah Lazor. Sarah? Thank
Yes.
you. Mirelle Lemaine. Elaine Mahoney. Juanzi Mensa. Fior Ortiz.
Here.
Thank you. Robert Puca. Celine Rosado. Adam Sachs. Meredith Staten. Ethel Tias.
Present.
Gib Viconi.
Present.
Thank you. Irsa Weatherspoon. Sharon Wedderburn.
Present.
Thank you. Elaine Weinstein's excused. Deborah Young. Thank you, Deborah. And I see in the chat that John Buckholz is here, but somehow he's frozen.
I'm here now. I couldn't unmute, but I was stuck in the chat window. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
So we have
Yes, 16 present.
We have a quorum at 15 out of 27. So at this point, I think that we've exhausted the issues that present themselves on this item. Some of the issues, I get the sense, are unacceptable to the majority of us. So I ask for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we support the.
Who's speaking, please?
This is Sharon Wedderburn. That
Thank
we
you.
support the LPC approved items and that we reject the applicant's request for a pergola sitting on the roof and a garage with a 2-car cutout on Brooklyn Avenue.
Second that.
Okay. So just to repeat, we're supporting the LPC approved items. And those are, what are those items, Mr. George?
Okay. Those would be the window masonry openings at the rear facade, the metal balcony at the rear, the jeweler balcony change of material at Brooklyn Avenue, enlarged bulkhead at the main roof. There's a cornice and fiberglass brackets, and new parapet height at the rear facade, and replacement windows in wood clad.
Okay. So at this point, what we're unwilling to support, Ms. Wedderburn, would you please repeat that?
So I'll repeat my motion that the committee supports the LPC approved items and the committee reject the proposed 2-car garage and curb cutout and the pergola on the roof.
I have a point of information.
Yes.
Yes, I was wondering, is it possible for, let's say that this motion carries and then the applicant goes back and then modifies, would they be able to then come back to the community board to ask, I don't know, let's say to ask about the pergola anew, or is that impossible?
All things are possible.
Okay.
Okay, so we're withholding support for the 2-car garages, the 2-car garage curb cut, and the pergola at what? The pergola 7.5 feet tall?
Yes.
Okay. Not support the 2-car garage curb cut and pergola at the height presented. Is that accurate, Ms. Wedderburn?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second it, John.
I have a point of clarification for the
Yes.
motion.
Yes.
And I support the motion, but I have a question. Not supporting the garage, that would include the rooftop deck and the railings?
I believe the motion is not to support the 2-car garage curb cut.
And the garage enlargement as well.
Okay. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure because we didn't support the roof deck or the railings. Okay, on the garage. Okay.
Okay. As the president of Crown Heights North Association, I believe there was a letter that went from Crown Heights North to the applicant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to say anything about that, Ms. Young?
No, I've already said what I had to say in respect to that. The letter outlines the parts of the application that we did not support, and I believe those are supported in the motion made by Ms. Wedderburn.
Okay. So last time, not supporting the 2-car garage curb cut and not supporting the garage enlargement, nor the pergola at 7.5 feet high. And the second is by Mr. Buckholz, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we're calling the roll on that motion. Ms. Islin, would you
Yes.
please? Okay.
Lisa Atkinson,
Yes.
thank you. John Buckholz,
Yes.
thank you. Robert Callahan,
Yes.
thank you. Janet Collins,
Yes.
thank you. Nora Daniel,
Yes.
thank you. Kevin Farley,
Yes.
thank you. Najani Granville,
Yes.
thank you. Kathy Islin, yes. Zarima Jordan, Zarima Jordan, we'll come back. Peter Crashes,
Yes.
thank you. Sarah Lazore,
Yes.
Fior Ortiz,
Yes.
thank you. Ethel Tyus,
Yes.
Gib Viconi,
Yes.
thank you. Sharon Wedderburn,
Yes.
and Deborah Young.
Yes.
And I'd like to just go back to Zarima Jordan. Zarima, I'm sorry, my mistake. Zarima Jordan. She was present. I'm not getting a vote from her. So without Ms. Jordan's vote, we have 50.
1 second, 1 second. Irsa Weatherspoon, yes.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Hello.
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 I'm not sure how to count Ms. Jordan's vote, but now we have 16 yes and 1 not responding.
16, yes. Okay. And no abstentions and no no's. So the motion carries. Thank you for coming back, Mr. George. If you want to drill down on this again, we're always here to respond to questions from community residents about how they want to improve their properties. We will be bringing this recommendation to withhold support to the full board next Thursday. If you see your way through to making changes by then, I don't know if you want to come back next month to the land use committee, but this is what we have so far. And I thank you for making the changes that you made and at least bringing that to your client. So we will take this to the full board next Thursday. Thank you again. So at this point, we're going to move on to 982 Sterling Place. Who was here for 982 Sterling?
Okay, that's me again also.
Okay. Oh boy, okay. All right, Mr. George, frequent flyer. All right, so at this point, you were making some changes to the areaway, if I remember correctly?
Correct. Let me share my screen. 1 second. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Tiny.
Okay. Okay, this project is located at 982 Sterling
We
Place.
can't see your screen.
Oh, you can't?
No.
It's really tiny.
We see everybody's name.
I think you shared the wrong thing, Mr. George.
Okay, let me get out of this.
My apologies. My computer is spazzing out on me. I do not know how to work this Mac, and I'm trying my best to do so properly. And I hit the wrong thing apparently and shared something that's not supposed to be shared. I'm sorry.
I haven't seen anything. Was it Bear? Okay, you're good. I haven't seen anything strange. But we are waiting for Mr. George to show his changes to his project so we can move on to Euler.
Right. Let's see. Not sure why it's not sharing now.
There we go. Nope. Nope. What's going on?
Huh. I have the presentation up. No one could see it?
There's a tiny little screen in the middle of my screen. I know that.
Huh.
Try sharing your full screen instead of just a window. I think it may be sharing a selected window, which is your, okay, yeah, that is more promising. No?
I see the Meredith Staten is on. Oh boy.
I think we're viewing Meredith's screen now.
Wow.
Right. Maybe that's the thing. I don't have, did you give me permission to share? Maybe that's what the problem is.
If Mr. Staten is the co-host, and maybe that's the issue.
I apologize, you guys. Mr. Staten is calling in on the little touchscreen pad that we loaned him from the district office. And seeing as I was having the difficulty trying to identify if I was the one sharing, I know he must be struggling himself. I do not know how to get us out of the vortex of Windows. I need Mr. Witherwax right now. So I will just try to undo sharing for everyone and then give it to who's supposed to have sharing rights right now, Ms. Tyus?
Mr. George.
Okay, I will give it to Janice George. So give me 1 second and let me unclick anyone can share. No one can share anymore, but he is on a board computer, which means he will still have sharing rights.
Oh
boy.
No good deed goes
unpunished. Privileges right now. I'm going to assign some privileges to you, Miss Tyus, okay, if I can. And we are going to communicate with, take it out. I'm going to assign. Let me see how I can do this. Oh, wow. This is interesting. Wow. Okay. I believe he was on before me, so I might know he was not. Okay, I'm listed as host. Y'all can continue speaking while I try to figure this out. Please do not take too much time out of this, out of your discussion.
Well, for the ULURP items, we definitely wanted to.
Yes, just give me 1 second.
All right, time is flying by. It's 7 o'clock. Mr. George, can I ask you to stay with us until the 2 ULURP items are done and we can come back to 982 Sterling?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So for the ULURP items, take them in house number order. I think
Is there any way
that's
to clear the screen?
pretty fair. Ms. Collins, I heard you. I'm not in control of the screen at the moment. I don't think. No, I'm not. So,
My button for participants and for me to unmute.
all right. So for 888 Atlantic Avenue, I would ask the representative to step forward virtually and give your name and we can start working on your project.
Hi, Ms. Tyus, Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel PC for the applicant. Good evening.
Good evening, Sheldon LaBelle, Richard LaBelle. Okay. We've talked before, so here we
Yes.
are. looks like we're making a little progress with clearing the screen. So please tell us about your project. I think we've seen it twice before.
Correct.
Okay. So what's new, if anything?
Well, first of all, Ms. Tice, will we have the opportunity to share our presentation right now?
I want to say momentarily, but I'm not quite sure with the technical difficulties we're having at the moment.
Okay.
I will have to defer to Ms. Neal on a resolution for that, because what I'm seeing on my screen is a echo of about 5, 6 different iterations of someone else's screen.
One of the
Ethel, excuse me for the interruption. Would it be worthwhile if we all log out and log back in,
I
and
think
thereby
that's a
giving
great
Julia
idea.
the opportunity to regain control?
I think that's a great idea. And Mr. Staton can choose another access method rather than.
May I make one suggestion first, Ms. Tice? One of the younger attorneys who's far better at this than I am says that Meredith needs to log off and log on again.
He's the main problem, okay. That connection is the main problem. Ms. Neal, can you make that happen? Hello? Julia Neal, Michelle George?
I'm on the phone with Mr. Staton. As you can see, we are resolving the issue. Give me 1 minute. Y'all can continue discussing. Thank
you. Okay, so we'll continue discussing without pictures. We've all become wedded to the pictures, which are worth 1,000 words. We're still going into a screen echoing. Again, Ms. Neal, the suggestion was to log Mr. Staton off. Can you do that? Let's see if that cures the problem, and then bring him back.
Ms. Tyus, she said, Julia said she was working, or she's on the phone with him, so she's trying to figure it out.
I heard that.
Okay.
I heard that, but what I'm trying to do is something very direct, but we shall see. Seems like it's not as bad as it was before. I don't know whose screen I'm looking at.
Ms. George, is this your desktop or is this Meredith Staton's desktop?
We're talking to Julia Neal. I don't think Michelle is with
It
us.
says viewing Meredith's statement.
Because it looks like it's whatever, that it's not Meredith Staton's computer that we're actually, that is the problem. It is whoever is allowing us to see Meredith Staton's computer that is the problem. So there's this
not Meredith Staton's
too much.
computer. If I understood Ms. Neal earlier, they have loaned him a board office computer. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but anyway.
Somebody should tell Meredith Staton that we are watching him check his email right now.
Yeah, it's
privacy.
privacy.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they want to share this.
Yeah. Well, the email that's up is from me to you guys as a group, so I don't think that's a big issue.
Anybody have his phone number?
She's on the phone with him now. How many numbers? I'll try anyway.
Sorry, this is Sarah Lazar. I was just wondering, is it possible to completely disable screen sharing for a moment? Because I think that the 982 Sterling Place presentation, I could put the link.
I've asked Mr. Staton to reboot his computer, guys, because I can't get him out the room. So if he reboots his computer, then he will exit in finality and be able to come back in.
Okay, I'm calling him on his landline. I don't know if that's going to work. I'll try this.
I am on the phone with him right now, Miss Tyus. I'm speaking to
I'll
him.
try
I'm
his
please reboot his computer.
Try his mobile phone next.
But yeah, I was just going to say that the 982 Sterling application seems to be a bit of a straightforward PDF. And so I could put the link to it in the chat so people would be able to just kind of not look at what's being shared on the screen, or maybe the screen sharing could just be put on pause for a while and we'd be able to just all look at the PDF.
Okay, hi, this is Ethel Tyus. Can you please ask Mr. Staten to log out and he logged out. Okay, thank you, Mrs. Staten. Bye-bye. Okay, let's see if we can move ahead now. Ms. Neal? Mrs. Staten says Mr. Staten logged
Mr.
out.
Staten, we're looking at his address book. He is not out of the meeting. I was on the phone with them, and I guess in clicking over to talk to you, I am no longer on the phone with them. So he's going to have to reboot his computer.
I think whoever's the host of the meeting could try to share their own screen and it might cancel this all out.
That sounds like a good idea.
If we all leave this meeting, then I have to create a new link and you will have to log into a new link.
Ms. George, you're the host of the
So
event.
if you're the host,
I will do that.
If you just say share content at the bottom of your screen and share one of your screens or any window that you have, it may just cancel out.
I only have share multimedia. Share content is not available at this point in time because Mr. Staten is he's using a board computer which has access to all of the city's stuff.
If you go to participant and reclaim host role, is that possible?
It is not. It's a meeting, not an event.
Okay, let's
already
start over.
One can share. So.
Let's clear the decks and start over. Everybody,
We're back. He's out. He's rebooting his computer.
Oh, he's out. Okay, good. So now we have that back, and we're going to move on to 888 Atlantic Avenue. Keeping in mind that this is a first of two sessions that we're going to have with each of the two ULURP applicants, and that we will vote at our meeting in November on each item. And it'll go to the full board in November as well, each one. Okay, so with that said, I'd ask Mr. Lobel to remind us of the salient points of the application and the proposal for this new building.
Thank you, Ms. Tyus. Good evening. If we can have Diane Baton from my office share her screen without blowing everything up, that'd be great.
Okay.
So while she proceeds to do that, again, as Ms. Tyus said, this is not the first time we've been before the community board, so we'll just come out with the salient points. Since the last time we saw you, we had the benefit in September of attending the City Planning Commission hearing at which DCP presented their presentation regarding the Atlantic Avenue corridor. And I'm sure that at least some of the people on the call have seen this, but it's really quite an impressive presentation, which really looked at Atlantic Avenue in detail and demonstrated why the additional bulk that's proposed for Atlantic is entirely appropriate. And I know that they're not presenting tonight. I know that they've got an upcoming presentation to the community board on October 21st. I think from our perspective, we would just ask that, we know there's no vote tonight, but that to the extent that any members of the community board haven't seen it, there's a link that's available to that presentation, or you're able to see it when city planning presents it later in October. But for us, it was educational as much as it was a supportive presentation. Importantly, at that hearing, Commissioner Anna Levin really took the department to task and said that city planning really needed to sit down with CB8 and help them along by showing them this. So, it was nice to see the commissioners get involved, and Winston Von Engel at the time did say that he was going to come to the community board, which I think led to the upcoming meeting. As you can see before you, this is 870 to 888 Atlantic Avenue. The boundaries of the rezoning have not changed. We've got roughly 7 lots constituting about 35,000 square feet of lot area. These lots are primarily housed with open or vacant uses. The proposal before you is similar to many other proposals. It is for a rezoning of this I'm sorry, someone asked me to speak more slowly. Okay. The rezoning is for a rezoning from M11 to a C63A district, which is for R9A bulk. This would also include a text amendment to, of course, map an inclusionary housing district, which would mandate 25 to 30% of the proposed 228 units here would be affordable. So roughly 70 of those units would be affordable units. We also have a text amendment application, which would require a 20-foot sidewalk along Atlantic Avenue here, which can really be seen as a benefit of this application, which is that the applicant here will be doing the work not only to adopt the text amendment, but importantly, this building will improve this block by really improving the pedestrian experience at the street level. And additionally, there's a special permit to reduce the number of accessory parking spaces. So in the bottom, it encapsulates the applications, which would be for a new 17-story mixed-use building with residential, commercial, and community facility, approximately 228 dwelling units, including 69 affordable. So what I'll do now is really briefly run through the land use rationale for this application. Again, this only amounts to maybe 4 or 5 slides. At that point, Sandy Hornick, who's joining us tonight from our office, who formerly was Director of Zoning and City Planning, would speak very briefly again to the density on Atlantic Avenue and some work he's done around this area. And then finally, Nick Liberis of Archimera Architects would present the plans and building materials. We also have Yoel Teitelbaum, who is the project applicant who's with us, and Noah Bernstein of the environmental consulting firm AKRF. So can you advance? Right, so here we have the zoning district. Again, it's very small and crowded, but as with other applications, this is an M11 district along Atlantic, which is at this point poorly zoned. And the idea here would be to allow for mixed use residential and commercial use. So you can see the circled area is where the rezoning would be. Next slide. This provides a little bit more of a detailed view of the tax map. The C63 district, of course, allows for mixed-use residential with commercial uses. Here, the commercial use would be on the ground floor of the property, and there would be roughly 15,000 plus square feet of commercial use and roughly 4,000 square feet of community facility uses. The placement and square footages can be reviewed by Nick Liberis in the plans and materials. Next slide. So you can see from the area map, again, located on Atlantic between Vanderbilt and Underhill Avenue. So what's important to note here is that the property to the south of us along Pacific Street at 1050 and 1010 Pacific Street, these were the subject of prior rezonings with the community board, which rezoned those parcels to mixed use with an R7A. So that R7A allowed for a 4.6 FAR. The next rezoning that was approved by the community board was the Grand and Pacific Avenue rezoning, or Pacific Street rezoning, which allowed for an R7D. So in accordance with that, and in accordance with the M-Crown resolutions, the Atlantic Avenue properties, which include this application now before the board, were part of the Atlantic Avenue mixed-use sub-area, and were called out in the resolutions of being rezoned to a maximum of 7 FAR. So the discussion really here is around that margin, which is that the R8A caps out at a 7.2, the R9A caps out at an 8.5. And so much of the discussion we've had has been around that, that difference and what that does and what that means to the building and density here. Obviously, you can see here that you're at the intersection or off the intersection of Atlantic and Vanderbilt. We talk about what it means to rezone properties and what it means to add density. And, as we'll kind of discuss in a little bit, this is a major thoroughfare in Brooklyn. It's one of 2 or 3 extra wide streets at 120 feet wide. In fact, the intersection of Vanderbilt and Atlantic Avenues here is wider at that intersection than 34th Street and 5th Avenue in Manhattan, which is, of course, home to the Empire State Building at 125 stories tall. So just to give you some idea of comparisons, like you guys have it. I mean, that intersection is literally one of the widest intersections that benefits the city. You can see here some of the background documentation around Atlantic Avenue and around that corridor. I think with that, what I would do is just allow Sandy Hornick to speak on Atlantic Avenue. Sandy, of course, with more than 25 years of experience at city planning, has really studied the area a lot and was responsible for many changes leading up to these types of applications. And after that, I think Nick is going to share. So Sandy, can you give us your thoughts?
Sure. Can we go back just the one slide?
And I just want to acknowledge that Ms. Tyus had asked for us to go expeditiously. Sandy's just going to speak for a few minutes, and then Nick is just going to go to plans. Thank you, Sandy.
Okay. So very simply, between 1950 and 2000, the city's population grew by 100,000 people. In the last 20 years, it's grown by 800,000 people. That's 20 times the rate of the previous 50 years. And it has created enormous housing pressures. And while we seek to protect places like the brownstones we just saw, or the row houses we just saw on Brooklyn Avenue, we need to find places where this go. And both Atlantic Avenue and Fourth Avenue are major corridors that lead to downtown Brooklyn with transit access. And I just point that Fourth Avenue is now in the process of being rezoned to an R9A equivalent. When we look at the difference between the R9A and the R8A, it results in about, on our side, about 40 extra dwelling units. And what's happened in the city, really, by being too timid on rezonings, and it's not peculiar to this location, we've pushed the expansion of the city's population, especially the city's affluent population, from one neighborhood into the next neighborhood into the next neighborhood, with resulting displacement. And the difference here is if we accommodate 40 extra units, we get 10 extra units of affordable housing, we get 30 extra units of market rate housing that would otherwise go into the existing housing stock and create a lot of pressure. And the real argument that I'm trying to make here is that it's important to accommodate this housing. It's really the only real practical strike against displacement. And if we look at this map, which just came up here, which I can't see, maybe you could blow that up a little bit, all right? And center it a little better. Yeah, so this is a map from city planning report that came out on the 2020 census. And the chart on the map on the left is change in white population. The map on the right is change in black population. Blue shows where populations are growing. Red shows where populations are decreasing. And basically what you're seeing here is this enormous pressure right where we are talking in Crown Heights, in Bed-Stuy, in Bushwick, where this expanding population from the core is pushing in, and either it replaces people or it doesn't. If we had done this 10 or 20 years from now, those yellow circles would be a little bit further to the west. All right. And but what you see, is rezonings are needed to provide additional housing. And I'll stop there because I'm supposed to be fast. Okay.
Thank you, Sandy. Nick, if you could proceed with the calculations and plans, and then we'd be happy to answer questions. I know you're there, Nick. You're sharing your screen.
Yeah. Okay, sorry about that, guys. I was just trying to. I don't use this interface often. Okay, thank you for having us, everybody. This proposal is a 17-story building. it's about 250 units maximum. The way that it's masked in a way to kind of disaggregate the form as it heads towards the top, such that it reduces the number of dwelling units. So we have about 230 units proposed, with about 70 units affordable. It's a mixed use building. At the ground floor, we have some retail. What is being proposed right now is 2,500 square feet of M-Crown use, which is currently being contemplated as light manufacturing use potentially. In addition to this, we have a 1,800 square foot space at the ground floor, which is further supplemented by about 2,500 ground feet in the cellar, which is free space. And this space right now is intended to be used either for a local art gallery, which has a very strong social consciousness and a very strong philanthropic arm, or a local school. So these two uses are currently being courted by the developer. We've had a lot of very positive feedback from them. These spaces are bespoke and set up for their use to their demands. So, just to recap, this is more than what was offered in terms of a proportion of a give back to total building size for both 840 and also the Pacific Grant project, which are the two projects which set the precedent for this. Going further up the building, it's a very carefully laid out assembly of all these apartments, such that we could keep it such that we could kind of disaggregate it at the top in the way that it was shown in that through the image. So you can see that the building kind of becomes much smaller. So these top few floors are quite small. You can see that they're about 5,000 and 2,000 square feet for the top floors. So what this means is that you have something which tapers up in a way which reduces the presence of the street. These are the views looking west. Here's a view from the future Pacific Park. You can see the Clinton building over here. This one that torques. Here's a view from the street. Here's a perspective. Here's a nighttime perspective, and this is an explanation of the programs that the developer has been courting. So again, these are very community focused. There's a strong arts identity to one of them potentially, and then this is something where with any new building, the code now makes it very difficult to not build things green. There's all these new local laws coming in, which will basically mandate that people building facades, people building green roofs, people building anything that encloses a building have to be to a certain standard, because by 2030 there are going to be reporting requirements, which are going to make it very onerous if these things aren't now. So you can be assured that anything coming in is going to be to a very advanced standard of green building. And with that, my presentation concludes, and we are happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you, Ethel.
Looking back to our goals as a committee, based on the email that was sent around on September 4th, and the links that were sent. Someone's making a lot of noise in the background. Can you mute yourself, please? Thank you. I'm expecting questions from committee members. Again, who is it on a telephone number 347-2 ending in 94? Who was that? Who was that? Stop making noise. Please mute yourself. Thank you. Okay. So at this point, I'm hoping that everyone had a chance to read the environmental assessment statement and look at the presentations that were emailed around for this application for 870, 888 Atlantic Avenue. So Let's go through the questions that you pulled out of the data that we've looked at and the information that we've looked at. Gib Vaconi has a couple of questions, and so does Sarah. I expected Gib to have questions. We rely on Gib to be our chief analyst. I want to hear from people who may show up later and say, I don't understand. Those are the people I want to hear from tonight. If you don't understand something, ask now rather than wait until next month and throw a monkey wrench into the gears. Hello?
I have a question.
Yes,
Janet
Ms. Collins.
In one of the slides, you can go back, you showed two maps. One map showing a white population and a black population.
Yes.
Can you repeat for me the significance of presenting that?
Sandy, can you do that?
Sure.
Based
So,
on race?
the two maps, again, these maps produced by the Population Division at the Department of City Planning. They're in a report on their website. And what they're doing is they're showing change between 2010 and 2020.
Right, I understand that, but I'm wondering why you made that showing these two
Because
maps in
the
your
darker
presentation.
colors, this is actually done not for this purpose. It was done, I'm writing something on something else, but the two areas outlined in the yellow, hand-drawn yellow ovals have the darkest colors. And what they're showing is change, right? Basically, what I believe is going on is there's a sort of a gentrifying core of population that's been moving out in the center of the city for decades, literally, right? And you see that the greatest place of change is in this community. And that change either takes place in existing housing, in new housing, or in some combination of those two. The more new housing that it takes place in, the less existing housing has to change, or the less pressure there is on existing housing to change. So it's not an argument to say that everything in the city should be developed with an Empire State Building size building, but it isn't trying to make an argument that we, everybody in every community, need to stretch ourselves and think about how much housing we can accommodate so that we reduce the pressure and we meet the demand for this housing.
Well, I guess I'm questioning why you chose to use race as to show the change as opposed to some other descriptions such as socioeconomic.
Well, as I said,
I'm
why
sorry,
did you
Mr. Hornick. Mr. Hornick, let me take a crack at answering Ms. Collins as a committee member for Land Use Committee. Ms. Collins, I want you to take a look at your email during this meeting. Mr. Bocconi was diligent enough to send around some data he compiled. And if you have read through the EAS, you will see that we're facing in this project and the other one, gentrification dynamics based on the anticipated rental rates that will be charged for the market rate housing. So the people who live here now will not be able to afford the apartments that will be built under this project and the 1045 Atlantic Avenue. One of the things that I think we need to ask as we work with applicants to see what can be done to use private money to build more housing is the affordability quotient, okay? The affordability for the apartments that they're proposing to build, for which they will get tax breaks, tax credits of one sort or another, 421A, Affordable New York. At the end of the day, they will be able to improve their return on investment for the work that they are doing here. The numbers that I saw for this project with 228 dwelling units, which would include 69 affordable, at 30% AMI. So you're talking, I believe, $60,000 to $70,000 a year income for these apartments, and you're looking at a population that's living here now that would not be able to afford these apartments. So long story short, the charts that Mr. Hornick is showing speaks to that dynamic. People want to come here because they can choose to take a subway into Manhattan if we go back to working in the office, or they can take a train, Long Island Railroad, out to Long Island for other purposes. We have a differing dynamic happening here. Not quite sure how it's going to shake out, but those are the things we need to be looking at. Who will be able to afford to live in these projects, in these proposed apartments? So
and I understand that.
okay.
And so that's why I was saying, why not have a comparison of socioeconomic background as opposed to race? Because not that's these particular maps are showing up well. Can I finish? Can I finish, please?
Let me just say, Ms. Collins, the race and the income flip sides of the same coin. I think we both know that.
Ethel, if I may,
I think that's an assumption, and I think that's a dangerous assumption to make, that if you're white, you have money, and if you're black, you don't. And
we're looking at,
that's what I'm hearing. I have a problem with that.
Okay.
And for that to be presented like this, I have a problem.
Do you have questions from your reading of the EAS or the presentation?
I have questions. My question is what I just stated.
Why is he using ethnic charts? Is that your question?
Based on your explanation also, is if we're looking at socioeconomic background, then why are we making that division of, black and white? It should be socioeconomic tallies here, and a map showing that, not race.
Well, thank you for that
all races are poor, and all races are wealthy.
Thank you for that.
If it's okay with you,
I would ask you again, Ms. Collins, to check your email for some very simplistic data that's been provided by another committee member, so that all of those answers in that short chart.
What I just said, okay?
Okay, I hear you, but I'm also asking you to take a look at those numbers. They speak for themselves.
Ethel,
Okay. Yes,
if
go
I
ahead.
could, I just like to jump in to address that, but kind of in a sideways fashion. So this is something we were having some very, very long conversations after Gibbs' last presentation. So Gibb at the last meeting made some very, very eloquent points about how the AMI in this area has shifted. And so I reached out to you both, and I was asking, where's this data? So what you guys shared with us was shocking, because it's something that I don't think a lot of people understand, just about how what it means for the movement in this area. So when we were speaking to Sandy happened to be writing an article for which he had these diagrams. So he said, yeah, this is 100% true, and check this out. So when he showed us this, we thought, this has to be part of the presentation, because it makes it so obvious. And it's something that I think, like you might anecdotally be walking through the neighborhood, and you might notice things have changed, but it's very tough, I think, to understand it. Like, we're not, as like human beings, like you don't really perceive scalar quantities very well. So to see this in this very graphic way, for me, this was shocking, and also like really drove the point home. And I think this also really reinforces Sandy's point that if this is the epicenter of this trend, for reasons that you said, Ethel, which are that you're super close to the city, you're super close to these really nice parts of like Brooklyn, so everybody wants to be here. So everybody wanted to be here, drives these prices up. Like if you have an area like M Crown, which does not have a lot of density, like there's not going to be a lot of displacement on these blocks in Atlantic, because much of it is just is like commercial, like manufacturing, storage right now. So if this is the area that gets some more density, I think this is like a win-win-win for everybody, because you could have something in here which is only going to bring in housing units that didn't exist before, and this begs the point Sandy makes, which is that, the questions that the community board should be asking themselves is how much housing can we can we bear? And I think in this case, you have a very interesting situation with M Crown, where you have these four or five blocks that front this massive avenue, that are basically barren now. There's not there is stuff, and that's not to say that there aren't people there, but I mean, relatively speaking, it's not very populated, and you have these 6 blocks that sit to the south of a Pacific that should be more sensitively considered. But after seeing this, after really looking into these figures that you and Gibbs sent us, and after hearing what DCP also was arguing for, and we were hoping that they would be coming tonight because they have some very interesting stuff to talk about as well. It just seems like this swath could and should handle some more density, because this.
Okay, I hear you. I think that's the 4th time that's been mentioned.
Good.
Richard LaBelle,
yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Was the Empire State Building built before the zoning resolution went into place?
Oh, I'm going to defer to Sandy.
It was built under the 1916 zoning, which had no cap on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, it was built before zoning as a conceptual precept for urban design was put in print.
Correct. I would just note the 1916 resolution for this district would have allowed you to go 120 feet up on the street. So
okay. So we're not going to use that here. Thank you. All right. Of course. So what we're seeing here, I need to ask you, is it possible for you to make this entire building truly affordable at 30% disposable income? No, I know that. That's a crazy question. I'm
30%. Wait, no. But is that something in the zoning?
In the back of my mind, Mr. Nick Liberis. Okay. 100% affordable.
That's a fair question.
I know it is. So what is your expected ROI on this effort?
I don't know, because I'm not the developer. I haven't even seen the pro forma. So what? And let me just also speak.
Let me get an answer from Richard LaBelle. What's your expected ROI, Mr. LaBelle?
Sure. I'm happy to talk about this because we do talk about this with the city as well when we're deciding what we should be asking for. And the conversation around that is that we're not really afraid to say that this is going to be mixed in this building with both affordable and market rate units. There are people who come to the city who come from, places like Ohio, who do not qualify for 40%, 60% AMI, and this building provides a chance for them to move here as well. So, and these are people who live and work here. These are people who work for the city. So I can defer to Yoel, who's on the phone, in case he knows what the offhand what the ROI is. It's probably something that is in flux, given that we don't even have a final plan for the building. But I would say that there will be market rate housing here that will cater to people who are market rate. There will be affordable units. There will be deeply affordable units. It is a mixed building, and we're not ashamed to say that. There's demand for those units too. The creation of those units relieves pressure on everyone else.
Okay, thank you very much. I need questions from the committee members. One question comes to my mind that's really directed at the city. I believe I read that you're required to use natural gas for your energy sources for the building.
You're not correct? You're not. They're actually trying to stop you. So that's something that we could definitely make a commitment to. We could say that we're a completely 100% gas-free building. So that's something that's very common these days.
Your energy source,
you would have electricity, and you could commit to doing a certain percentage renewables.
Like what?
It's really up to what Con Ed offers you at that time. There's some other stuff, Ethel, actually, that we've been doing with a bunch of other buildings recently. So there's a Con Ed Clean Heat program. So look, what's happened in the past 6 months is that with the Biden administration, they have set up certain programs that are now taking effect, which are opening up like lots of incentives, a lot of rebates, stuff like this, and it's making it much more possible to do geothermal, solar, super insulation in a way that it hasn't been in the past. So we're doing this on, I would say, every single building that we're currently designing and currently building. Even stuff that's just started construction. We have one building that's just starting now that we're actually taking a small pause so that we could understand better how we could incorporate this in. And why this is happening is because finally there's a bunch of financing mechanisms and there's a bunch of grant money that's incentivizing this. So you can be assured that anything being built in the next few years because of this and also because of Local Law 97, which will deeply penalize you if you don't have something really energy efficient, you'll see a completely new crop of buildings coming up, such that
that sounds very interesting because
it's almost here. It's almost here.
We're not getting the public realm improvements we wanted here. So we have issues with energy use, possible pollution, stormwater runoff. And I have some questions in the audience from community members now. And we'll start with Gib Vaconi, and then we'll go to Pierre Albert after Sarah's Azor. Gib, Sarah, and Pierre Albert. I think these are people who've read the materials and have some informed questions to ask. Mr. Vaconi?
Yes, please. Thank you. I just have a couple questions that I want to make sure that I'm understanding the numbers correctly. First, when I look at the number of units that are cited in the residential floor area, I'm coming up with an average unit size of about 680 square feet. Does that seem correct?
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, that's got to be one of the smaller average unit sizes I think we've seen in the project. I mean, when we did our bulk analysis, we used about 900 square feet. I guess we're not there anymore in Brooklyn, but these are really, I mean, they're a lot smaller than the apartments I think we sort of envisioned when we looked at the M Crown, the available bulk in M Crown. The other point I wanted to make is on Atlantic Avenue, the M Crown vision is for 7 FAR when there's additional non-residential use. So the idea was non-residential use going on to the second floor. In other words, more than 1 FAR non-residential. Now, in this building with the lot size you have under the M Crown guidelines, we would have had probably about 30,000 feet of non-residential use. But in this project, which is a little bigger than the M Crown vision and density, we only have 14,500 square feet of non-residential. So I think that's a lot different.
Yeah, it's 20,000.
What am I missing?
It's 14.5 commercial, 5,500 community facility.
Right, but the community facility is below grade, is it not?
Oh, correct, yes.
All right, so I'm not giving you the below grade credit on that
understood. Understood.
Yeah. So then we've got. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that was understood. I mean, I think we need, we need to understand that this is sort of the profile was a little different than what M Crown was seeking. The last piece I wanted to point out was, it looks like there might be some flexibility in the application, but right now the applicant's looking for MIH4, which is workforce. That's 30% affordable at 115% AMI. For comparison, we would tend to, I mean, our closest mark on MIH with M Crown would be MIH1, which is 60%. Meredith Staten is sharing a screen again. 60% AMI.
God, no.
So we'd be looking at, in the M Crown world, a median family income for a family of 3 of about 64,400. In the MIH4 world, 123,500. It's almost double, with a corresponding increase in the amount of the average rent. So this is really a very different world. I mean, I understand the argument that we need additional housing and additional units, and I agree with that argument. But when we're talking about units we're subsidizing, I honestly think that the census data that we shared with you that was provided by the Department of City Planning, as well as Mr. Hornick's data, shows that we need to be providing housing below at the lowest levels of affordability available under MIH, not at workforce level. Those rents compete with the market, and they are the hardest rents for the administering agents to lease out under the lotteries. I think if you talk to any of the community-based organizations that are doing administering of MIH housing, they will tell you it's very, very challenging getting tenants to take those apartments. So I wanted to make those 2 points, and I appreciate the clarification. And thanks very much.
Sure, and Gib, just to be clear, the applicant is mapping 4, but is mapping 2 and 4, which would
2 is almost as bad as 4.
Well,
I mean, we're looking for like 1 and 3 here.
No, I understand. No, understood. And of course, you know, that's one of the reasons we come here, and one of the reasons that, you know, that this goes through the entire ULURP process, and that eventually the council member makes the decision with regards to affordability. So,
and also to be clear, this is actually stuff that we did prior to that stuff that you had sent out, Gib. So that what you sent out completely changed the entire conversation. Okay. So we are definitely going to be changing that. And it's, you know, it's something that's up to the developer to kind of spearhead with you guys to kind of, you know, figure out what the most appropriate tranche is. But, you know, one is definitely, we've been talking about 1, and we think that one is an appropriate thing for the area. So this is, you know, this is something that we had submitted to DCP. We didn't want to change anything from what had been submitted originally, just so there wouldn't be discrepancy, just in case anybody went and the check, but just be, you know, completely certain that this is something that was done a long time ago, and what it was also done with very good faith, because we had gone to a number of these meetings where people in the area had actually brought up that they were, you know, that they were in this weird in between where they were, you know, they were making too much money to get into some of the MIH stuff, and this came up twice at two different meetings over the past year for CB8. So, you know, we thought that would be something appropriate, but, you know, now we have seen stuff which has changed our thinking. So thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. We're going to move on to the next committee member who wants to ask questions. I believe that's Sarah Lazar.
Thank you. I have a few questions. I mean, my first one would be, are the developers anticipating applying for a 421A tax abatement?
yes, it's a rental building, and they would anticipate applying for 421A or whatever is available at the time that the building was eventually built.
Right. So this building would not only be creating a great deal of higher end apartments, but it also would be paying 0 in property taxes into.
There's other requirements that are carry with the building with the 421A. There's also currently, again, because they're restructuring the program, there's an affordability requirement of 25%. There's living wage for building workers. So it's part and parcel of the program. But yeah, there's no doubt that the building doesn't get built without 421A, as is the case with most residential rental properties that are in the city. I think there's a lot of concern over whether or not 421A is even going to be approved. So that's where we are.
Whether it's going to be approved or whether it's going to be struck down by the state legislature?
Correct.
I believe it's sunsetting next summer. It's
sunsetting next June, and what's coming in to replace it will certainly close a lot of these loopholes that you mentioned, Sarah. So you can be assured that this building will not be under this current 421A. There's just no possible way that could happen. Just because you have to have a footing in, you know, by the time that June rolls around to get vested. So, you know, I don't think it's necessarily something you have to worry about here. And I just want to also say there's a comment here about displacement with this building, and I think this is something true for, you know, all of these projects on Atlantic. They're not going to be displacing anybody, because there's nothing on these lots except for car storage and a McDonald's and, you know, like other storage in these lots that these buildings would be proposed, you know, so.
Right. So I have tons of questions, but I'm going to try to I'm not going to ask all of them. So I was looking through the EAS for this, and for this and for 1034. And I understand that you see this application as being an individual application, but the reality is that it's one of several that are all in the same M-Crown area, and that collectively have an effect, even though your application tries to isolate just the effect of just this single application. But so this application, or the EAS, says that it would not directly displace more than 500 residents, but it doesn't specify how many would be directly or potentially indirectly displaced. I mean, I saw that in the map of the area that you want to rezone, there are some buildings that do currently have tenants in them, but they are not, part of your plan. I saw that there are these envelopes that are for another anticipated development, but it's not yours. And so even though because it's under 500 residents, you don't need to specify. I was wondering if you could specify how many people live in those buildings that are very unlikely to remain there after a rezoning. And yeah, I guess that would be one of many. I have further questions about the claim that this is not going to affect the overall income levels in the area. I frankly don't believe it, especially since 1034, their application just, a little bit down the exact same road, says that it is going to affect the income levels. I guess I would just also say that, I'm a member of the County's Tenant Union. I've done some door knocking in buildings on Dean Street. And, one of the buildings I door knocked in recently, 75% of the building is empty. And it's because the landlord knows that it's rent stabilized. This landlord sees that there is development coming nearby, and they're thinking, maybe this is the right time for me to get the rest of these tenants out, to do a gut renovation, because if the buildings down the road are able to get, I don't know, $4,000 for a 1-bedroom apartment, maybe I should be able to do that with my building too. I'm sorry, I may be revealing a bit too much about my inclinations with all of this, but if you could at least answer the questions about the buildings that the currently inhabited buildings within the rezoning area, that would be
Sure.
great.
Sure, thank you, and thanks for the comments, Sarah. We appreciate it. So there's lots that are part of the proposed development, and then there's lots that are included in the general rezoning. I know Noah Bernstein is on the phone with us, who can answer questions directly regarding the EAS. I would probably just start, Noah, if you want to supplement anything I say, feel free. So on this lot, you would be looking at, I think that there's 6 dwelling units that are located. It's a 20,000 square foot lot, and there's 6 dwelling units. So I understand that, Yoel, who's on the phone with us, has spoken with the landlord and as well as tenants involved. And basically, that there's a discussion, despite the fact that I don't think any of them are on long-term leases. I think the discussion was that in the event that he's fortunate enough to get a rezoning, that they would immediately, and again, there's a long time leading up to when they would need to actually relocate, but that he's committed to assisting in relocating the people in those 6 units. In addition to that, there's 2 residential units on one of the other properties. And then there's a 4-story building with 7 units, which, Noah, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't necessarily think that's a soft site, given the fact that they've got existing, 7 inhabited units as well as mixed commercial in there. So yeah, is that the case?
Yeah, that's correct. It's and it's a pre-1974 building, so it's likely that there are rent-controlled units, and so it's not assumed to be a soft site for development.
So Sarah, just to answer your question, finally answer it, it's roughly 35,000 square feet in lot area, and there's roughly 8 residential units involved. This is, as Nick described, an area that's primarily underutilized, with the existing M11 zoning. And so when we look at this, we look at the chance to create some real, some real units. And again, understanding the discussion about levels, at least 69 to 70 affordable units. So it's a decent number.
Right, affordable, well, quote unquote, affordable.
Right. That's part of the conversation. We understand.
Right. So Ms. Islin had asked, what's a soft site? And would I be correct in the understanding that a soft site is a building whose zoning is quite a bit, that's zoned to be to allow quite a bit more than what the currently built building is. And so it's something where the incentive for demolishing the building and building something new is quite high.
Noah, can you just give us the book definition?
In short, it's a site that after the rezoning would be considered likely to be redeveloped based on market conditions. So typically, if it's an underutilized site, if it's a site that after the rezoning, the amount of FAR that would be available would be more than double what's built. There are other things that make a site developable, such as the width and depth of the lot. So narrow lots are considered less likely to be redeveloped. So it's a list of different factors that are involved that, according to seeker, would be considered highly likely, which would be then looked at as a projected development site, or less likely, which would be looked at as something called a potential development site, or just not expected to be redeveloped. 3 categories in our analysis.
Okay, moving on to the next questioner. Thank you for those questions, Ms. Lazur. We had questions from C. Beatty.
Hi, I'm a resident of the area. I just have a quick question about how changing the zoning affects the ability to build so much taller than the other buildings in the area. Like, is that a factor at play here? And how could we perhaps consider something that's a bit more in scale with the other buildings in the neighborhood?
Right, so I'll start, and Nick, I guess you can supplement. So there's an existing zoning district right now, which is an M11, which is a non-contextual district. And so in the city, there's differences between contextual districts versus non-contextual districts. Contextual districts have absolute height limits on them. So, previously in the area, the R7A district, which was mapped along Pacific, was a contextual district, which allowed for 95 feet. The R7D district that was mapped on Pacific and Grand was a district that allowed for 115 feet. So there was this marginal increase. The R8A district would allow for 145 feet as a cap, and the R9A district would allow for 175 feet as a cap. So I think a lot of the discussion at city planning, and again, one of the reasons I think that we appreciated their conversation before the commission, and from what I understand, the same conversation is going to be happening with you, is that one of the things they talk about is what happens on the street when you see this building, and they talk about the street wall of the building and then the total height of the building. One of the advantages to this rezoning is that it's not just a rezoning, there's also a text amendment which is mandating a 20-foot sidewalk here. So in essence, with the street wall at a contextual height of 95 feet, and with a 20-foot sidewalk, which is a widening of 5 foot over current regulations, it's actually the diagrams that they use, which is probably more eloquent than I can describe, demonstrates that the feel of it is not as bulky as a building that is 15 feet from the street line, and even if it's within 2 or 3 stories of that. So again,
Richard,
yeah,
Richard, I live 2 blocks from this building, and I can already tell that I'm not going to get sunlight in the morning in my building.
Right.
Why should this building be allowed to be built so much higher than all of the other apartments? Like my garden is going to be suffering, the trees, really, our views to the park and everything, it's going to be completely obstructed by this new building. And we're, we've gone through the conversation of how we're going to maybe bring in some or accommodate more people who are potentially being displaced. Like, to me, it seems like the height is really a big problem here, and we're not really discussing it in a material way.
Well, let me just jump in here. I think there may be a misunderstanding of where this building is vis-a-vis your house, because this building. So when part of what city planning does when they determine if this height is something tractable is they'll do shadow studies. So part of what makes this an area which can harbor some more height is that you're at the northern edge of the neighborhood. So that combined with the skew of the street grid in this area means that the sun is going to be to the south of all these buildings. That would be the higher buildings. So unless you're living north of Atlantic, it's not really going to be blocking much for anybody in this neighborhood. So what they do is that they will consider the width of the street. And since we have such a massively wide street, there is at the ends of the day, certain overshadowing that happens. But what you'll see when you see the shadowing studies is that the shadows that a building of a certain height. I mean, in this case, I've seen shadow studies along the avenue for stuff upwards of 250 feet. From the first 840 iterations. They will overshadow shadows that are there. So you're not really getting any new shadows. These are shadows that are being generated by other taller buildings in the area. So this area exists in this way because it's kind of a historical accident, right? So this is this big kind of scar in the urban fabric that's been sitting here for all these years because the uses moved out of the city, and all this other stuff to the north, to the south, to the west, kind of grew up. So you're right in that there's not a lot of context around here that's this high, but it's like a historical accident of a little bit, and that's kind of the impetus for you guys to have gone to city planning in the first place years back to do the neighborhood rezoning. So it's a good question. It's very difficult to answer in any kind of straightforward way beyond that. There's been very technical considerations about how this would take people's light and air, and it's not something that's done lightly. And you do have this massive street to the north where the bulk of the shadow will be falling. So unless you live to the north of there, I don't think it's going to have an effect on you.
I do live to the north of there.
You do live to the north? Okay.
Yeah, and I think that, like, I don't know, if you compare the building to really the other new developments right directly on Atlantic, like you have a series of like 6 or 7 story buildings, and then as well on Pacific you have a series of 5-story buildings, and this building is completely out of scale with those other buildings. So I guess the question to this zoning team and architect is really why is it a 17-story building? Is it based on the economics of the tower? Is that how this decision has been made, or is this based on a zoning change?
Okay, it's definitely based on a zoning change, and this is not going to be our final review of this project. I have 2 other questioners in the audience, Pierre Albert and Kaja Kuhl. Mr. Pierre Albert is next with questions.
Hi, yes. Thank you for having me. Community resident and former staffer to Assemblyman Kamara and some other elected officials. So my question really has to deal with the map that you showed about the demographics between the white and the Black and Hispanic population. I think it's great that you guys are aware of the changes that happen in the community in terms of Black and Hispanic people moving out, more Caucasians moving in. But I don't think that this building solves the problem. I think you actually shot yourself in the foot with using that mapping, because just to be, speak in plain terms, people like myself or low income people, when we walk down streets and we see buildings like that, we don't think, oh yeah, let me go in and put in an application. I really want to live there. No, what we think is, oh man, maybe I should look for something in Long Island. Maybe I should look for someplace else. This building is only going to lead to more buildings. People like us don't look at those buildings. Any race, any background, we don't look at those buildings and we're like, great, this is more housing. I can live there. I think this building is going to make the situation worse. I think that the community is often being shortchanged when we make these deals, and we have these mixed dwelling units where we get some affordable housing units and market rate, and we end up losing out. And the argument over and over again is that, oh, we have to make a deal. So I honestly think that, I mean, thank you for sharing the map and the graphics, but I think that's actually going to cause the more Black and more Hispanic and more low income people to move out. And I think that's going to cause more of the other people to move in. I think by you showing the map and the graphics, I think if you really wanted to supposedly help the community, I think you would make it all affordable housing units. But I know that you're not going to do that because there's no profits in doing that. But my actual question is for the arts programs. And I'm sorry if this material was shared, but I saw that in the PowerPoint that there were going to be possible arts program, and I'm assuming that's a selling point for the community. So have you gotten a chance to reach out to any of the local arts groups or any of the local nonprofits to see if this is actually something they want, to see if actually they'll participate in it, if they feel like they'll have a place in this new construction?
So Pierre, thank you for the comments. I'm going to defer the conversation regarding the art space to Nick. I just did want to say one thing, which is that, you know, with regards to the building and the numbers and who's going to be able to live there, one of the things that we've done as an applicant team is we're talking to various administering agents who are on an HPD list of approved nonprofits who would basically be responsible for administering the affordable units. So they're not in the control of the developer. You basically pick a nonprofit, someone like Breaking Ground, or another nonprofit. There's a short list from city planning, and those nonprofits then conduct a lottery, and we interview them to select a nonprofit. And one of the things that they're required to do by us is to conduct a financial literacy campaign to be aggressive in making sure that the units that are earmarked, and of these 70 units, 35 of them would be, at a minimum, would be earmarked to residents of this community board, so that the nonprofit goes out and aggressively markets to them, conducts a financial literacy campaign to specifically get those units occupied. All of the affordable units should be occupied. The lottery would be conducted, but half of those units, as currently constructed, would go to CB8 residents. So I appreciate the comment. It's something that we always think about and are working on. I'd ask Nick if he can to briefly discuss the art space and consult if necessary.
Yeah, sure. So the developer reached out to the Richard Beaver's gallery, and he made some substantial progress setting up a space for him and working out a framework for the LOI. So Richard Beaver's is a local gallerist who is an amazing human being, and somebody who has a lot of philanthropic stuff that he does through the gallery as well. So that was the only person that the developer was courting until recently, because it became apparent that there's a lot of interest with some local schools also. So so right now it's kind of up in the air who will be occupying the space. The space has been flexibly configured for both potential tenants, and it's anticipated that it's going to be part of any restrictive declaration for this rezoning to go forward. So it's something that's taken very seriously, and we'd be happy, I think, to have conversations offline with people about other potential tenants, other potential collaborators with the building.
Thank you, Mr. Liberus. I have a number of other questioners in the audience, including Mr. Crassus, Ms. Limley, Mr. Moynihan, and Mr. Ramirez. However, I have to remind everyone that we have an item to vote on our calendar, 982 Sterling, which we were diverted from that because we couldn't see the screen. And I'm hoping Mr. George is still with us, because he would have a date for LPC to present his project there. Mr. George, are you still with us?
Yes, I am still here.
Okay. I have to ask the audience's abeyance at this point in time to revert to the item we need to vote on based on a time schedule for the administrative agency that would see the application. Mr. LaBelle,
Yes.
we need to revisit 982 Sterling during this meeting. Your project, we'd like to come back to it if we still have more questions. And then we also have the other project to look at, 1042 Atlantic. So it's 8:15. I'm asking you all to hang in there. I knew this was going to be a long meeting, but we need to get this work done. So Mr. LaBelle, I'm going to take a minute and do, not a minute, I'm going to take 20 minutes and do 982 Sterling. Are you ready, Mr. George?
Yes, like I am. If you could share, allow me to share my screen.
All right, and I'm going to ask you to be brief since this is a revisitation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't have access to share my screen. Could someone?
Ms. Neal, can you speak to that?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
I don't have, I need access to share my screen.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, give me 1 second. And you should be good right now, Mr. George.
Okay. Okay, could you see my screen?
Teeny weeny. Very tiny. I don't know what's going on.
Yikes.
Possibly you could do a verbal presentation because we did see this before and explain to us what the changes are that you made.
Okay, so the purpose of this visit is to get your support on this accessible, I guess, ramp to the first floor unit of this conversion project. We're filing for an alternate to convert the building to a 3-family, and the requirement is to provide an ADA accessible, I guess, access to the first floor. One of the things we're doing, we met with the mayor's office for people with disability, and we worked with them with the plan, and also with LPC, the preservationist of LPC. One of the things we're doing on the sidewalk is, in order to provide access, we need to provide a second gate, which would have access to the ramp because of the compressed and small, I guess, area from the sidewalk to the front of the building. The second thing we're doing is providing, relocating the gate to provide a clear, accessible path to the front door. So the application is for, I guess, accessible ramp, modifying the gate from the sidewalk and modifying the gate under the stoop. Okay, it's a shame that we can't see the presentation.
Well, I think a committee member, Sarah Lazar, has provided a link that the office offered before. If you open that up in a separate screen, you can step through the pages, people.
Okay. Are you able to see my screen? Because I blew it up on my screen. Is there?
No, still can't see.
Huh. Well, if you have access to the presentation, would you be able to share it so that I could maybe go page by page? It's a short presentation, actually.
In the Dropbox.
Just so you know, Mr. George, what we're seeing is it's the browser window in which you have WebEx, but we don't see anything relating to your presentation at all. We just see your WebEx?
A tiny little black box. So Sarah Lazar, as I said, forwarded the link that the office provided. If you open that Dropbox link, you can step through it. I'm looking at page 6 of 16. And so that was there. If you have that in your email, people, you can open that up or just look at what Sarah just put it in chat.
So we're on page 6.
I was on page 6. I'm going to defer to Mr. George to direct us through the presentation he provided earlier.
Okay, so if you go to page 4, that shows the front elevation, a photo of the front elevation of the building. It's a 4-story brownstone basement and 2 levels above. And so in the front area would be the location of the ramp and I guess modification to the gate under the stoop.
Okay, we are looking at what you submitted for September 15th and the pages. I'm not seeing architectural drawings.
Okay, so if you go to page 9, you'll see the existing architectural drawings.
Yes, okay.
Okay, so this is existing condition. Currently, there's a single gate coming into the areaway. And if you see the access to under the stoop, we actually have a 2-for-2 dimension pathway. And so that's the issue. We're trying to widen that gate, essentially moving the gate over. Because the gate is actually 3 feet wide, but since it's on an angle, we don't have the pathway. So we're moving the gate over in order to provide access into the front door. On the next page 10, you'll see we're adding a second gate because to allow the clearance for the ramp. So the gate happens at the top of the page. We have a turnaround and a clear pathway through the front door.
Okay,
So
it doesn't line up with what we are looking at. What you're describing us for your drawings, your submission dated September 15th, we're looking at pages 14 through 16. Okay, so, and I remember now the conditions that the Crown Heights North Association spoke to. Ms. Young, if you're with us, do you want to speak to those?
Defer to Fiora on that.
I can share my screen and it will be okay. I just need to verify which application we are on right now. Oh, I heard 982 Sterling, which is what I opened.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, I'm seeing something totally different on my screen on different pages. Give me 1 second. I will share the screen for this file.
Okay, Ms. Young, you want to speak to the conditions that Crown Heights North Association was looking at?
Ms. Tyus, I said I was deferring. Remember, I was.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Fiora Ortiz.
Hi, I'll just read the letter that we sent to Mr. George on behalf of Crown Heights North Association. Thank you for sharing your plans for 982 Sterling Place with the Crown Heights North Association, Inc., China. We have reviewed your proposed plans and share the following with you. China will support this application with the following recommendation. We recommend the brownstone removed from the areaway wall be reused under the stoop as opposed to using new masonry units with the brownstone finish. If the reuse is not possible, we would like to see samples of other work involving matching brownstones with new masonry. We are pleased to see the applicant will recycle the gate and fence. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And that is China's response.
Okay, thank you. Mr. George?
Yes, I could respond. Yes, we will be able to reuse the existing masonry. One of the things we're also doing in shifting the gate over, there will be masonry from under the stoop, which we could reuse on the opposite side in order to provide clearance. So we are certainly looking forward to recycle any existing brownstone that gets modified in the process.
Thank you. I don't believe there were any other exceptions or conditions that would prevent the committee from supporting your project plan. I'd like to hear from the committee on that with a motion on this item. Again, I don't believe there were any other conditions with preventing the committee
Madam
from
Chair,
supporting.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I just have a quick question regarding the presentation, page 7 that's printed on the page. So removing the brownstone on the left side, you'll be putting it on the right side, and that will give enough room for wheelchair accessibility into the front door. I'm trying to visualize that.
Yes, yes. If you go to, let's say, the elevation drawing on number 11, page 11, it shows the existing condition. On the right-hand side, we're removing that portion, 9 inches of bounce on that side. And if you go to the next page, you will see that we have installed it on the left-hand side, shifting the gate over, which would provide the clear access into the house.
Thank you.
Under the stoop.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Ms. Neal, I don't know if you're still struggling to working on putting up.
The Mac is not allowing me to share my screen. It's only allowing me to share a link, which Dr. Lazar has already put into the chat, which is what I was trying to share. So,
okay.
Unfortunately,
so folks,
I'll learn this for the next month. I'll learn it for next.
Okay.
Ms. Tice, I do have one question though.
Yes.
I want to ask if the owner is going to be living within the unit, within the development.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
It's a young couple with 3 children, and they recently purchased the home 3 years ago and undergoing the renovation process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so based on what we have, we've seen this before. We have an assurance that the color match will be made by reusing existing materials on the building. I ask for a motion from the committee on this item, where they're going to convert to a 3-family and they have to make it ADA accessible. Hello?
Motion to vote on the proposal.
I second.
So, Mr. Mensah, I believe you're moving to support the.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. And I have a second from Ms. Young to support the widening of the gate and using the reusing the existing stone work and masonry to color match. So I would ask Ms. Island to call the roll on this motion to support.
Before we do point of information, is the motion in support of the letter from the Crown Heights North?
It's a motion to support the widening of the doorway, the areaway door into the building, and color matching by reusing existing stone from the building.
And I don't recall. I just want to know, was that the recommendation from Crown Heights North in their letter that they wrote?
Yes.
This is Kathy Island. Isn't there also an alteration of the gate at the sidewalk? That's part of the application.
They're widening the gate.
Well, the gate
and in the Dropbox link that Sarah Lazar sent around for our meeting in September. So if you guys want to take a quick look at that, so you can see we're looking at I think pages 5 and 6 in coming to the end from there. Do you need time to do that?
Could I just mention, if you look on page 14, it shows an elevation from the sidewalk into. What we're doing is keeping the existing gate as it is, but creating a second gate, which would, continue the fabric of the existing structure. So even though we're modifying the masonry, which is sort of a half wall, we're trying to match the height of the masonry with the gate.
Okay.
This is on page 14.
I hate to say it, but it's page 16 in the link that I have. Page 16 of 16.
Oh, okay.
It's showing the new gate, the extra gate.
Yes, you're right. You're right. I'm looking at the actual page as opposed to the PDF. Okay,
Right.
it's page 6.
Thank you. So I hope that answers your question, Ms. Collins.
Yeah, I have a question for the proposed metal gate.
Yes.
So you want to put metal in those boxes there, those shapes?
Yes. So we are reusing the existing. If you look to the right-hand side, that's the existing condition. So what we're doing is we're modifying that top rail and modifying the masonry, removing the masonry below that. But at the same time, with the proposed, we're, I guess, reusing that top rail as part of the gate, just to continue the fabric of that facade.
So that brown, those two brown, one rectangular and one square box, that's filled in metal?
Yes, filled in metal. That would be
Filled in
painted.
metal as opposed to mason.
Exactly, and that would be painted the same color of the brownstone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any more questions on the motion that's on the floor? If not, I ask Ms. Islin to call the roll. We're supporting the conversion to comply with ADA by widening the entryway and patching back with matching stone from the building and having a wider gate at the entrance to the areaway.
Princess Ben James, I'm sorry, she's excused. Lisa Atkinson,
Yes.
John Buckholz,
Yes.
Robert Callahan,
Yes.
Janet Collins,
No.
Nora Daniel,
Yes.
Kevin Farley, Ms. Granville,
We'll come back.
I'm sorry, was that Ms. Granville?
Yes.
Thank you. Kathy Islin abstained. Ms. Jordan,
Yes.
Peter Crashus,
Yes.
Sarah Lazore,
Yes.
Ortiz.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Staton? Mr. Staton? Ms. Tyus?
Yes.
Mr. Vacconi?
Yes.
Ms. Weatherspoon?
Yes.
Ms. Weatherburn?
Yes.
And Ms. Young? Ms. Young? Ms. Young? Thank you. That's a yes?
Yes, it's a yes.
Thank you. Thank you. $14 yes, 1 abstention, 1 no.
Okay. Thank you very much. The motion.
Ms. Tyus?
Yes.
I'm also a member of the land use committee now, and I wasn't included in the vote.
Oh, we have you marked absent from the beginning.
Yes.
Oh, so sorry.
Okay, so we're going to change that. Okay.
Yes, Mr.
Yes.
Massey, you weren't here, and your vote is yes?
Yes, yeah, I apologize. Yes, I got the time wrong. Sorry.
So it's 15 yes, 1 abstention, 1 no.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, motion passes, and we will present this in our recommendation to the full board next Thursday. Mr. George, you may want to be present in case there are questions from the full board, which I doubt there will be, but I would ask you to be present. When are your 2 projects going to LPC?
On the 26th.
26, both of them.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, 10/26.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And we got through this, and now we will look to see you next Thursday. And the link will be on the board website calendar for meetings.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a quick question about 266 Brooklyn Avenue, the items which the board voted not to support, the garage and the pergola. Is there something that we could, I guess, come back and work out specifically what the details that you would like to see?
I think they were very clear. They don't want a second curb cut there because you have a curb cut that goes through the entire row over to St. John's Place, I believe. There's already a curb cut there. So I don't know how you would patch that up, but that was the main sticking point for which the committee withheld their support.
Okay.
And the pergola being visible from the public way.
Okay.
So those 2 things, the curb cut, the garage enlargement, and the height of the pergola. So if you could massage those into place and come back in November, maybe that would work out.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Right. Thank you so much, Ms. Titus.
You're welcome.
Thank you, committee.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Okay. So we have 16, 15, yes. And now we'll go back to 888 Atlantic, and there were some people who had questions for that project. And they were, I believe Kaja Kuhl was asked their questions, and next people would be Crassus, Limley, Moynihan, and Ramirez in that order. Mr. Crassus. We're back on 888 Atlantic.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can see you too.
Okay, wasn't sure. We're jumping around a lot. I wasn't quite sure where I was located. I have a very simple question, I think, although just to follow up on Sarah Lazur's point about I think the narrowness of these environmental analysis when we're looking at individual applications instead of a neighborhood-wide rezoning. She was talking about the impacts, the displacement impacts. I think I'd like to kind of create the equivalent argument relative to the other infrastructure components, like, for example, schools, which there's a very good reason to be concerned about the number of elementary school seats that are available with all of these individual applications floating down the pike. And we already know that there's a likely shortfall once Atlantic Yards is completed. So in the area. So I think that Jonah Rogoff was on the call. And so I thought maybe we could hear a little bit about what the city can do to bridge, if they're moving forward with these individual applications instead of actually the neighborhood-wide rezoning that we were originally pursuing. How do we reclaim those infrastructure elements? How do we get the city to focus and deliver? Because we know that the individual applicant is unlikely to deliver a school, and I don't want to be in a position in Community Board 8 of having to go through an 80 Flatbush where they have to, create a massive building to deliver to create more school seats. So and have it funded by a private developer. So I just want to have, you could talk about this in the same way about a lot of other elements, like the improvements to Atlantic Avenue and the rest. So is Jonah or somebody from DCP still on the call?
Hey, Peter. Yeah, I'm still on the call. I would just say that, we're absolutely open to discussing. Normally, when we propose an area-wide neighborhood rezoning, we accompany those changes with infrastructure improvements, and so there is a limitation for private applications, and but that being said, we understand that there's been a flurry of these applications, and there needs to be a holistic look at the infrastructure needs, whether that's everything from sewers to schools to open space to public realm improvements along Atlantic. So we want to start that dialogue. I would just say too that city agencies, we've already talked with some city agencies already, and we'd like to bring them to the table. And I think, putting aside the applications, there's a lot of work that agencies do routinely. Just, like for example, SCA updates their 5-year capital plan based on school seat needs. And so that's done, regardless of a rezoning or not. And similarly, DEP, always looks at sewer line connections and overall investments in an area. So I think you're hitting on a really important point, and we'd love to, have a more that together with our, we have a capital planning division as well. And so we can, continue that conversation.
So I appreciate the point and the promise of focus, but I just would circle back around to the idea that, when there's a neighborhood-wide rezoning, the community has more leverage with the city to kind of create these kind of changes as a part of the neighborhood rezoning effort, whereas there's not necessarily a timeline or an ability to leverage with the city if these individual applications come through. I mean, actually one block of Atlantic from Vanderbilt to Pacific, with the approval of if these projects move forward and get approved, that are before us today, one block will be half upzoned on the south side. So that's just going to complete that entire block. We all know will be upzoned in no time at all. So but we're not going to be left with that opportunity to look the city in the eye and say, do this. And we're not going to be able to, our elected officials are not going to be able to tell us that they have the leverage with you to do something. So, I'm very anxious about this, and I, keep wondering about why we would be setting aside this neighborhood rezoning effort. And I guess that would perhaps maybe circle it back around to the developer and ask them if they've spoken to the next city council member, and if they've expressed any priorities to you. I mean, we obviously, you don't know who the next city council member is, but the perspective, there's candidates, and so have you spoken to the candidates for the office?
I know that Yoel has had conversations. We had conversations for literally years with Councilmember Cumbo, who is obviously terming out, and I think in a large part due to not just the length of the application review, but of course also because of the pandemic, the application stalled, at the city. So I know that Yoel's reached out to Crystal. I don't know how deep those conversations have been. I know he introduced himself to her. We don't, obviously she's not elected yet. We are interested in engaging that dialogue. This would likely be approved under her jurisdiction, and we don't know yet. She doesn't have a history on land use, but she knows about the project.
Thank you very much. I think the next person up to ask questions is Ms. Limley. Are you still with us?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I really second, like Peter asked pretty much my questions, and I'm just living in the epicenter of like where all the construction is happening. I'm right here on Pacific Street between Grand and Classen, and I've been here for 20 years. And I just earlier on, the whole conversation about existing community came up and where people will go, and the whole conversation about income, $100,000 income a year per family necessary. I just see my beloved neighborhood being pushed out, and I'm totally up for changes. I'm not against changes, but I do want everybody to just be sensible, because traffic from Nostrand to Vanderbilt on Atlantic Avenue is already really congested and awful. And there's being 175 new apartment building built next to me, and there are lots of other sites already approved. I beg everybody to keep in mind that there are existing neighborhoods and people living here, and it has always been a worker, low income, fabrication community. Like my next door neighbor who has a wood shop will not be able to maintain his wood shop because of the pressure and the congestion of of Pacific Avenue Street. Sorry. So that's all I wanted to say. I just really wanted to share my
Thank you for
concern.
that.
And thank you
very
for
much.
hearing. Thank you.
We share your concerns.
Thank you.
Yeah, the next.
Ethel, I just want to make,
Go
I just
ahead,
want to, I know you're aware that there's an additional Euler bond tonight. I just want to make sure. I know in the past, Ellie's talked to me about the fact that we're on a clock with that. We know we're on a city planning schedule. So I know that the conversation is still ongoing, but I just want to make sure we didn't like cut him off at the end.
No, well, I'm hoping people will stay. This is the first of 2 meetings. Okay, so we're going to be here. I hope the rest of you will stay so that you will hear from one of the best applicant that has come before this community board, who's been supportive and sensitive and smart and just wonderful. So
I'm sorry, Ethel, I can't let you say all these lies without interjecting. But I do want to say that I really have a lot of answers to some of the questions that were asked. So I just want to link the 2 discussions and saying that, I would love the opportunity to answer a lot of the questions that have been asked for.
You're going to get that chance. We're going to cut this off in a few. We've got 2 more questioners, and then we're going to move over to 1042 Atlantic. If I may, Mr. Moynihan. Ms. Moynihan. Is there a Moynihan in the audience?
Yeah, I think you may be referring to me, but I didn't put my hand up, so it's
okay. Oh, I thought there was a question in the chat. You don't have a question? We'll move on. Ramirez.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, cool. I don't know why my camera isn't working, but I'm just gonna continue on. Good evening, Community Board 8. My name is Renzo Ramirez, and I am a member of 32BJ SEIU. I am here on behalf of my union to share our concerns regarding YNT Development LLC's proposed development at 870-888 Atlantic Avenue. We believe that developers should commit to providing prevailing wage building service jobs in order to build a more equitable economy in New York City. Most building service jobs are filled by local members of the community who need and deserve family-sustaining wages and benefits. YNT Development has reached out about making a commitment to the prevailing wage for building service workers. We will continue to keep the community updated as we hold conversations with the developer. We urge you to recommend that YNT commit to providing prevailing wage jobs for property service workers as part of your recommendation for this project. Thank you so much for your time.
That is a good move. Get it in writing. I like it. Okay, unless there are other questioners on 888 Atlantic, I want to thank the project team and move over to the other ULURP application that we want to discuss this evening, and that would be 1034, 1042 Atlantic Avenue rezoning.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Uh,
Ms. Tyus. I think there were some other people. They have their hands raised. There was
I'm not
Channing
seeing,
Moore,
I don't know
Kaja
why.
Kuhl. I think Gibb had his hand raised again. Sorry.
Okay, this is the second, it's 8:45. This is the second, we're going to have two meetings on this. This is the first of two meetings. And I would ask that, since these are so similar, that we move on to 1034, 1042 Atlantic, unless there are questions that are just singularly only for 888. If that's okay, then I would want to move on. Who's here for 1042 Atlantic Avenue rezoning?
So it's Rich. Ellie asked me to just like go over the land use items for 60 seconds, and then he and Nick would present the materials.
This is so convenient. Thank you.
No problem. So good evening. Once again, Richard Lobel. I'm here with Ellie Pariente, who, as Ethel introduced him, is familiar to the community board and was the applicant in the Grand Pacific Streets rezoning. I'm also joined by Nick, the project architect, as well as Kevin Williams from Equity Environmental, who did the EAS. This is a rezoning of a parcel of approximately 24,000 square feet, of which roughly 18,000 square feet lies along Pacific and a 6,000 square foot portion along Atlantic. I'm sorry, 18,000 square feet along Atlantic and a 6,000 square feet portion along Pacific. The development would produce two buildings, one that would be a taller building on Atlantic at 17 stories, and one that would be on Pacific at 9 stories. The Pacific Street building, I would note, is 9 stories. That would be rezoned to R7 AC24. That rezoning is one that has already been approved by this community board on that block. Previously on 1010 Pacific, the community board approved R7A bulk, as well as for 1050 also on Pacific Street. So that 6,000 foot portion is you know, the community board's kind of weighed in there. What Ellie wanted to talk about was the portion along Pacific, and Nick would present the project plans as well. We think it's an extremely innovative design, and Ellie was very excited about the programs that are offered there. And so with that, I would introduce Ellie and Nick.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna let Nick introduce it from an architectural standpoint. I think what Rich was trying to explain about the Pacific Street, about the uniqueness of the site, is that about half, a significant portion of it is on Pacific Street, and then another portion is on Atlantic. However, the site goes 120 foot into the block, which means that it's divided between an C63A and an R7A district. So the density that we're proposing, essentially the mix of the two, leads to something in between, which yields an average of 7.9 FAR for the Atlantic Avenue building, because 20 foot at the bottom is in R7A, and then the rest is in a C63A proposed. That's what I think Rich was mentioning about that. And then after Nick has given, you know, the architectural presentation, I will tell you, you know, my ideas. This is the second time we present. If you recall, I had presented, I believe it was in April, trying to get some feedback from the community board on what they would like to see at the ground. We're giving a 13,000 square foot space to the community as what we envision to be a youth training camp, which would hopefully be a NETS training camp for the youth, for the community youth. But I'll get back to that in a minute. So Nick, why don't you give them the architectural presentation, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Am I on mute? Am I muted?
No, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay, so this project is situated towards the middle of the M Crown area, and we're in an area which like much of the block is very low right now, and has self storage. And like Ellie said, it goes through the block, and this gives us a couple of different opportunities. Number one, we could maximize what we're offering back to the community. And what this means is that we have an emphasis on a ground floor use, which is seeking to really thicken up Atlantic Avenue. Something that city planning has been pushing for some time is this sidewalk widening, and we've taken this a step further. We've incorporated this idea of this urban room into the front of the building, so that we could showcase and we could celebrate this use which is being given back to the community. This youth center, the training center use that Ellie mentioned. So you can see here the front elevation of the building. This building has a tower element on the east side, and then there's a series of setbacks which kind of have a gradient fade to like a lighter material, which are a much more mute counterpoint to the more strong tower element. The fade theme kind of continues onto the ground floor, where we have this element down here, which is contemplated as a collaboration with a local artist, where we'll
Nick,
have.
Nick, is this your screen that you're sharing? Whose screen is this?
This is mine. Yeah. What do you see?
Can you
What do
scroll down to the? Can you scroll down to the youth center? Because right now we
Yes.
can still see the main building.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay, give me a sec. You know what it is? There's there's annotation controls that I'm having a hard time releasing. Sorry. Okay, here. Okay.
Can everybody see the screen? This is Kathy Island. Are people seeing your screen?
I hope so.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. All right, thank you, everybody. Okay, so we have these panels over here, which we seek to collaborate with somebody local. This is something that we had worked out with the current council member, who had expressed a deep fondness for the thematic imagery in certain Beaux-Arts portals, most significantly the Brooklyn Public Library portal right next to Grand Army Plaza. So we kind of thought about this critically, and this is kind of an update to this idea. So we have this thickened sidewalk, which at its extreme is almost 30 feet from the curb. And what we're proposing is to really link this indoor and outdoor space in a way that that allows the community to gather and to kind of partake at a distance the stuff that will be going on downstairs. This is a 13,000 square foot facility, double height. It's been set up to handle all manner of sports uses. Like Ellie said, we had been reaching out to the Nets for the past year and a half. They
And
have
Nick,
yeah.
just to come back to that, because I see some
Sure.
questions in the chat.
Sure.
The Nets, it wasn't the Nets proper. It's basically the concept was to have a training camp for the local youth. You know, what I was saying earlier is that back in March, I had asked for some feedback from the community board as to what they would want to see here. Our vision is some form of a youth center. Whoever, you know, it would be a subsidized space by us. So whoever ends up being the nonprofit or the operator has yet to be figured out, depending on what gets approved. But that was our vision. And to come back to what you were saying about Mrs. Combo and her, you know, fondness of the art, the idea was that this block, as Nick mentioned, is, for lack of a better word, pretty desolate right now because there's only empty warehouses for the most part. And so we wanted to bring some life to it. And we thought that, you know, between the sidewalk widening that city planning suggested and this canopy that we're proposing, along with the art, that would just, you know, bring in a pop of color and life in the middle of the block and sort of become an anchor for that block and a place, you know, where the community could hang out. Because at the previous applications, I remember that for 1010 and 1050 Pacific, there were always these feedback about, you know, places for community members to utilize, you know, alleyways, you know, just some places that the community members can use. And we thought that this wider sidewalk looking into a double high ceiling youth center was the perfect place. And it would just inject some life into the block. And as you can see from the early rendering, as we did with our previous project on Grand and Pacific, we are including a lot of art on all sides of the building and pops of color just to throw some life into the area. And yeah, so sorry, Nick, I promise I wouldn't cut you off, but
it's all good. It's all good. So yeah, so like Ellie said, I mean, this is very, very centrally located. Since Ellie is like a bona fide builder in this area, this is something that if this project comes through quickly, Ellie would be the first one in on this avenue, I think, to complete a building. And so it has the potential to kind of be kind of the heart of the neighborhood in this portion of the neighborhood. So we've really taken that seriously, and there's a certain civic responsibility that comes with that. And Ellie has, like Ethel mentioned, the whole way through for the past few years, he's very, very unique among all of the developers that we work with. And I think that this is something which is a very honest give back in a way which enhances the street life and which gives a significant thing back to the community. And just to be clear, also, with regard to the Nets, and to expand on something Ellie said, this was a youth program. So specifically, they have it's NBA Cares is the philanthropic arm of the league as a whole. And so this was something that would be done through them, which would be a youth focused thing. So it's not like a training facility for the basketball team. It's something that would be branded by them in support of local youth. So moving on, I have this annotation thing. There's somebody named Max who can annotate. I don't know. Is there a question? Does somebody want to annotate anything? Because if not, then I'm just going to clear the annotation because I can't move to the next slide unless I stop annotating. So please forgive me. Okay. Okay. So next slide. So this is a view of the proposed future building in the context of the current building that Ellie is building. This is the structure that's at the right side of the screen over here. This is the Pacific Grand project building for which Ellie received ULIP approval maybe 2 years back now. So you can see that the arts program is expressed on the side of the building to the north over here, where it was always intended to kind of act as a gateway welcome into the neighborhood from the north when you're coming off of Atlantic. And this wall that you see with these five portraits is high enough that you would see it from Atlantic. So Ellie's vision for this area has always been something something similar to a condition that you see in certain southern European cities where you have the mural district. So you would have this district over here, which would be mural. You can see that the existing building right now is programmed to be muraled, and then these other buildings further down, the new ones that are being proposed, would also have a significant muraling presence. So just something to further distinguish the neighborhood as it comes up. Before it's filled in, we would have this very strong graphic presence where Ellie has proposed to work with the local community, to work with local artists, to bring.
We had retained the Bushwick Collective, which is an art agency that only works with local artists. And what the idea was to do a competition and come up with the best concept for the art installations. And this was also suggested by Miss Combo 2 years ago. So yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
You're all good. Okay, so the building on all sides would be hosting on these lot line walls.
Do you want to go back to the Pacific Street building, and because you skipped through it?
Sure. Yeah, well, I just wanted to go back to being to kind of just cap this part. So you can see over here, we have this one large mural which would be on the west side, which is proposed over here on this lot line. There's also some articulation for the upper portions of the building which have been set back in a zoning compliant way, such as to give a little bit of like visual interest, and also to provide outdoor space for the occupants. Same thing on this on this east side over here. And, you know, the front facade again, going back. So this is the Pacific Street side over here. This would be the R7A portion. This is the main entrance that we're proposing to the community facility. There's a lot of traffic that's off on Atlantic, and we think that this is a possibly safer place for kids to come in and out of. There's a secondary entrance which has been proposed off of Atlantic, so you can pass through, but the main entrance has been proposed over here. So this is the view looking east from Pacific, and so onto the building particulars. So the front building is about 7.3 FAR. This is the one facing Atlantic, and we have about almost I think 175 dwelling units over here. Oh, sorry, 174. These are larger units. They're about 850 square feet each. It's been contemplated that they would be more there'd be more catering to local families. This is a AXO for the Pacific Street structure. You can see it's of that R7A scale, the typical 95-foot height. And this is something, again, like Rich said, which has been done in this neighborhood up and down this street in the past. So these are plans for the community facility. So we have about 13,000 square feet across two floors. As was described before, we have an entrance coming off of Pacific here, and you come in over here, and you have this entry sequence over here where you have a space which could probably be programmed as admin, you know, like accessory uses, and there's a grand stair which comes down over here and then puts you into the main space. So the site, for context, is about almost 200 feet long, so this is quite wide and quite deep. And in addition to that, we have about I think 12 or 13,000 square feet residential over here. Excuse me, commercial. So you have the double height space, and then you have the commercial space over here, which is accessed from the north off of Atlantic Avenue. Let me clear this annotation. Okay, so once you head up into the building splits. So it's been contemplated as a single building with this shared cellar with these two tower elements. The one on Atlantic, an actual tower, the one to the south, you know, a contextually scaled building per the R7A zoning. So the setbacks, and then you know, you can see that.
You want to talk about MIH?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so this is something where we were also thinking about option 2, you know, before Gibbs explanations, and you know, so Ellie has been very clear that he's going to be following the community's recommendation, and he is, you know, he's embracing of option 1, and it's something where he's been very, very transparent with all of his with the financial calculations too. And I think Ellie, that you mentioned that you would be talking about the pro forma and some of the financial aspects of the project in the comments before.
Well, there were questions about it before, and you know, since I'm in the middle of construction down the street, and you know, I have firsthand knowledge of the economics of these projects. I'm happy to, you know, answer questions. I don't know how to talk about it directly, but to continue on the MIH option, if you recall, on Granite Pacific, we were requested to do option 1, which we did. Here, I believe I had proposed option 1 and 2. I might be mistaken, but I believe I offered option 1 and 2. I know that in the past month, since the 840 application, there's been this concept of option 3. I think Gib and council member Combo made a great point about the benefits of option 3 and the deep affordability. Certainly a compelling argument, which I think resolves a lot of the debate that I'm seeing going on in the chat about, you know, what affordability really means, et cetera, et cetera. I think option 3 certainly, you know, does that. The other thing that I would like to just briefly mention is that when you do option 3, you also have to provide an additional 5% for the 421A requirement, So not only do you provide 20% at deep affordability, you also have to provide an additional 5% in order to qualify for 421A. Although, as Nick mentioned earlier, with the deadline looming in 8 months from now, it is very unlikely that these buildings will get built with the current iteration of the 421A. But I just thought it was something worth mentioning. And yeah, I mean, we've been really trying to gather feedback from the community board for a while on this one. And as always, I'm open to comments and questions or recommendations, whether it's about the MIH, size of the units, youth center, and other uses that the community board would like to see. So if you have any questions, really feel free. Ethel, you're muted.
That out. All right, thank you. I think we have some more people. Mr. Kuehl, I believe, is still wants an opportunity to put a question on the floor. Mr. Kuehl? Mr. Kuehl, are you with us?
Yes, sorry. Hi, it's Ms. Kuhl. Hi, my name is Kaya Kuhl. I had a question for the project earlier, but I think it applies to this too. It's continuing the conversation around more comprehensive planning, and I want to throw in the topic of the public realm of Atlantic Avenue. We're looking at these two projects now. And it's been said before, right? There is a need for a more comprehensive look, and M Crown provided that. I am particularly interested in sort of questions about sidewalk setbacks, which I think are necessary if we would take a comprehensive look and see if that same space could be maybe taken from the street, Atlantic Avenue, down the further east is only 2 lanes. But to turn this into a question, Ellie, could you talk to any kind of outreach that you've done or communications that you had with DOT, with the community board, or any other entities to get everyone on board to take a more comprehensive look at these various different rezonings with respect to turning Atlantic Avenue into a 21st century artery that it currently really isn't? And
I apologize. You're talking about, when you mentioned DOT, you're talking about from a traffic standpoint?
Just from a redesign of the 120-foot wide street. And again, I'm sorry that this was a question that was also meant for the previous developer, and now I'm throwing it at you because I think it applies to both projects. That I really, I'm interested in how there can be a collaborative approach to rethinking Atlantic Avenue in light of these giant projects.
So the one thing I want to explain, which hasn't been said tonight, is that a lot of people, I mean, most people don't seem to understand that even these private applications don't get designed. We don't basically come up with what we want to build, right? We have many early meetings with city plannings, who basically is supposed to have, I mean, I trust that they have a comprehensive vision of what they want to do. And then they give us their requirements. And after different iterations, they finally, in our case, it took us 1.5 years, end up approving, what we're proposing. So the sidewalk widening was one of their requirements. I'm not the one in touch with DOT. That's something I think at the city planning, level. But all we're doing really is we're given a guideline and a framework by city planning, who I believe uses the M Crown framework, and then we try to make the project fit within those guidelines. But to be clear, we're not the ones, creating these guidelines. We're just following, city planning and community board's vision. After that, from a DOT standpoint and a reshaping of the Atlantic Avenue traffic thing, that's really above, beyond my pale. I don't even know if anybody on my team could be able to answer that one, but.
Well, yeah, I would say just two things. Number one, these city agencies are quite siloed, so this is something that we deal with every single day. it's very difficult to get them to collaborate with things. There's no real infrastructure to link all these different agencies. That being said, you have somebody on your board who is uniquely well suited to answer this question in Give Cody, because what you guys have with Vanderbilt is unique in the city, I think, and also spectacular, and a spectacular achievement that you guys should all be very, very proud of, because you guys have been able to get DOT to do something that almost nobody else is able to, which is basically be responsive. So in dealing with them, you know, it's very tough to get them going. The past couple of years have been hell for them. You know, I've seen this firsthand, and they, you know, having to deal with all the all the open street stuff that they have to deal with. They've had to deal with all this all like the restaurant street shed stuff. Like there's a bunch of work that was plopped onto people's laps, and then they had to deal with budget cuts, and you know they're horribly understaffed. But I think like this is something that you guys have a very proud legacy of doing over here. And you know, I think I could speak for both of my clients when I say that they would be very happy, you know, to join what you guys are doing now, just in terms of like lobbying DOT. I myself would be happy to help out in any way that I can. I have a lot of connections to DOT, and I'd be happy on behalf of the community board to help out in any way that you know that Gibbs sees fit. But I think
Thank you,
honestly,
Nick.
yeah,
Thank you, Nick.
sure, Ethel, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we're running short
I'm
on
sorry.
time. I want
Thanks.
people to ask their questions. I see Robert Callahan, who's a community a board member. He has a question. And then I would like to point out to everyone that everybody in this audience that lives here has what we call a vote. You have fingers to write letters to your representatives. Write and ask for that Build Back Better money. Let it come down to the state and let it come to the M-Crown rezoning. Make those phone calls. Write those letters. We can get that money. Go ahead, Mr. Callahan.
Thank you, Ms. Tyus. Ellie, I made reference to it in the chat earlier, but with the understanding that every developer is different, the Bedford Armory project has been something that I've been following. I'm sure a lot of us have been following, and the disappointment that at least in the city coverage that I've seen is that I suppose it was either that the community was presented with something that wasn't true, or it was misrepresented, or the promises were twisted in such a way after the deal was inked. I have to wonder if you would be amenable to for particularly the community space that you're envisioning, regardless of whether it becomes a youth center, would be amenable to sort of putting in writing the stipulations that the community decides with respect to making sure that members of the actual community can actually access whatever goes in that space.
Yeah, so from a legal, yeah, that's a great question. I'm not sure if you were following the last hearings on other projects, but what we managed to do very well with Give and Ethel on the previous project is come up with this restrictive declaration concept and a binding community benefits agreement, which is essentially a restrictive declaration that goes on the title of the property that basically forces us to do XYZ. That's a document that is negotiated with the community board, and that that goes and gets recorded against the property. So essentially, this is the legal way that we found. I mean, the community board found to keep, to make sure we keep our word, for lack of a better term. So I guess you have your great community board members to thank for coming up with such a tight way to keep developers to their word. So yes, to answer your question, we have a legal structure to make sure that whatever we present, whatever gets requested, ends up getting built and goes into title.
And a smaller follow-up, I mean, you know as well as anyone, Atlantic is a very loud street as it is. And like just a ton, like a cacophony of noise. this this public space that you have that we're looking at, do you have any sort of noise abatement that you're considering as part of this? Because I don't know that as well as you can. I don't know how hospitable you can make this space without thinking about the roar of cars that come through on Atlantic.
That's actually a great point. Honestly, I haven't, I haven't given it. It's actually a really good point. To be very candid with you, I haven't thought about it to that extent. The idea is that there's really no foot traffic on Atlantic Avenue, despite having great visibility. And I thought that the Atlantic Avenue buildings should be inviting to the neighborhood. Facing that huge corridor. The noise factor vis-a-vis that sidewalk is a great point. I don't know if Nick can think of any noise abatement. I know that.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff you could do. I mean, the number one principle is that you have to decouple stuff. So you basically you do like a double walled glass structure. You wouldn't transmit the sound. There's an air gap. There's also the technical ways.
Interior, Nick, that's for the interior. I think he was referencing. He was talking about for the sidewalk. No, isn't that Robert? Was your question about the interior?
Right. And I really want to stress, like I know that these kind of places and these quasi public spaces and tend to be over policed if they're allowed to be over policed. So I know that I would prefer that they not become enclosed spaces that are easy to close off if suddenly they become undesirably used. So
yeah, no. So I mean, the great example that I can come up with off the top of my head is the BEM building, which is in downtown Brooklyn. I think also has a rather large, outdoor seating installation. And despite being off of Flatbush and just in the middle of a lot of traffic in a very loud area, still gets very utilized. So I don't really know, and I'm not an expert at identifying or projecting how much of an effect will the traffic noise have on how much the sidewalk gets used. My job or my hope is to make the area inviting enough. After that, can I predict how much the sound will have, like how much effect the sound will have? I honestly cannot answer that question.
Well, there's stuff that we can do. Sorry for misunderstanding before. And what you could do is you could basically create a no parking zone that bumps out and even further widens the sidewalk. So this is something DOT is open to for certain programs, and this is something that they would support for such a program. So what you would do is you basically create another, let's say, 60, 70 foot wide piece of sidewalk, which was another 10 feet deep. And in that 10 feet, you would plant some trees. So you'd have some sort of a boreal cover, which would function as like a barrier to block the sound in that area locally. And then, it would be, it's still you're in an urban environment. You're going to have to deal with it to some extent. But there is evidence of this all over the city for certain parks. Just trying to think. There's ones that are close to. Well, first of all, there's other ones that are on the west side, right next to the West Side Highway. I mean, you have something similar where you have the row of trees, and then there's a bike lane, and then there's some more trees. So there's stuff that we can do like that to mitigate it.
Those are very good suggestions. I think we have some more questions in the audience. I believe Gib Bocconi has additional questions.
I do have a couple questions. These are mostly clarifications. With respect to the part of the property that fronts Atlantic Avenue, it looks to me from the numbers in the application that you're, unless I've attributed floor area below grade here, it looks like you have an FAR of around 7.4, but aren't you looking for C63A there?
So to answer the question, I think you know what, Nick, can you go to the slide that shows oh, you don't have the one with the calculation on the side?
Yeah, the calculations I have, Ellie, just from what I'm looking at in the LR item 3 is a 7.93.
Yeah, 7.9. So, okay, so just to answer your question, I think that the delta comes from, as I said earlier in the presentation, the Atlantic Avenue site is 120 foot deep. 100 of it would be in the C63A, and 20 feet of it will be in the R7A. So that 4.6 FAR in the R7A is what blends down the overall FAR.
All right. Okay, I understand. It looks like you're you're budgeting an average unit size of about 750 square feet. Does that sound right?
No, I have about 832 square feet. Go, oh, yeah, 174 units for,
You have 130. You have 131,000 feet of residential floor area. I'm only talking about Atlantic now, not the other lot.
I was looking at it as a mix. As a mix of the two buildings, it was coming out to 822.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go back and look at it again because it looked a little bit less than
The
that.
reality is that from the demand standpoint, and just from the type of building we want to build, we want to do slightly larger units because what the post-COVID market has brought is that there's a tremendous turnaround with smaller units as opposed to more stable tenancy with larger units. So I personally think what I'm hearing is when you can afford it, I think some developers are going to, when they can afford it, which is not always the case, they're going to start shifting to slightly larger layouts, which retains tenants longer. You know, somebody who moves into the 600 square foot unit doesn't spend 10 years in that apartment.
Right. Okay. How many square feet in the Pacific Street fronting building is above grade of the non-residential? You have 3,000 square feet of non-residential, but how many is above grade?
On the Pacific Street building?
One what?
One floor that's not residential.
No, but
Okay,
he's asking if I
so the whole ground floor is okay. So the ground floor is non-residential.
And you have a lobby. You have a lobby, but other than that,
you know what? Can you go to the rendering, Nick?
Sure. Give me a second.
You have the entry to the parking, then you have the entry to the community center, and then you have the lobby.
Okay. And I'm sorry, the community center again is how many square feet? I don't have the application now in front of me.
Altogether, 12,950 square feet, I believe.
Okay, and how many of that is above grade?
I believe it's about 3,000, but then there's a majority of it that's double height, basically. So it goes from the cellar and then opens up to the ground floor.
So the whole ground floor on Pacific Street is the community center, and then there's more below grade.
Correct.
Well, it's the entry point to the community center.
Right, but there's no other use on that ground floor other than the community center on Pacific Street.
No, just to answer your question,
well, there's a lobby. There's
a residential lobby, but in terms of other non-residential use, it's just the community center on that first floor plus additional below grade.
Yes, and the reason for that is that the city planning did not want us to have the access to the parking from Atlantic Avenue, which is a fair point, and they needed the entrance from the Pacific Street side. So between the entrance to the community center, the parking and the lobby, that's pretty much it.
And there's an egress corridor here, just to be clear. I mean, this is something because we have so much depth over here. This the site is 120 feet deep. We're not able to meet the common path restrictions. So from the back of the store, the only way to really think about this is if you do have a secondary egress coming out.
So that's right. So that's why you have. I mean, the area for the parking entrance and the residential lobby takes up a fair amount of that ground floor.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. All right. Got it. Now, you and then Ellie, you said that you were interested in you would consider MIH option 3 for this project.
I mean, it's certainly a, how do you say? It's
compelling.
It's a painful proposition, but I get, I'm happy to try to make it work with you guys. That's not that many people do option 3 as you probably know.
Right.
It's not that easy to finance, but it can still work. But if the community board feels strongly about it, as it seems they now do, we can entertain it for the right, if the economics allow it.
Okay. All right.
Thank you for that. Gib, please just briefly describe the option 3 being 20% of the residential floor area at 40%.
Right. MIH option 3 is the deep affordability option. It's 20% of floor area of residential floor area for affordable apartments targeting an AMI of 40%.
So,
Okay.
as I said, if it's something that you like to really see, I'll be happy to entertain it.
Okay. Okay,
It's-
thanks.
it
Those are my
seems-
questions.
It seems to be attractive to the group as a whole. I do want to point out that MIH's the mandatory inclusionary housing options are permanent. They're not like rent stabilization where you may change it from time to time or whatever. What will happen with MIH is that the incomes will change over the years. The area median income is going to change as time passes. And I just wanted to go back. I think it was Nick that mentioned earlier there wouldn't be displacement because there were so few people living in the M Crown area. What we get is an infectious rent setting disease that goes from one landlord to the other in the area when they see comparable units or of size in particular being rented for rates higher than what they're charging. They'll say to themselves, I can charge that and get a higher rent as well. So even though people aren't living in the M Crown area, the surrounding apartment rental rates will rise as just by comparison, just by the competitive market that is represented by the different rental units in the district. That's how the displacement happens, Nick. Okay, so I want that to be recognized. That's what's going on, and it's hard to control. But
It's
that's
understood. It's understood. And just to be clear, I was only saying that for this Atlantic Avenue corridor, not for the rest of the neighborhood. And the mechanism is very much appreciated, and that's hopefully how MIH can help stave that off. Because if you can replace these units with additional units, even though there's some more influx, you also up the capacity of how many affordable units there would be in the neighborhood. That's the hope for MIH.
okay. Thank you. So I'm trying to watch the chat to see who else has questions before we start to wind down. It's 9:30. So there are other questions out there before we start to wind down. Hearing none, I have to say that.
Can I ask?
Go ahead.
Sorry. Oh God, and I hate doing this at 9:30, but okay.
Oh, wow.
So I was looking at the EAS for both of 888 and for 1042, and I appreciated that for 1034 Atlantic. I appreciated that this EAS was more honest in acknowledging that the new residents will likely have a higher income than in the surrounding area. But because the population was not going to increase more than 5%, I guess the population increase was going to be 3.56%. Technically, you don't have to give specifics about the likely higher incomes. And that's just because the way that EASs are designed doesn't require that kind of, but I was wondering if, in order to arrive at this conclusion, you must have come up with some data. And I was wondering if you could share with us what you found about the likely income differential between the likely residents of your building and of the surrounding area. I mean, what I saw in the EAS was these highs and lows that you saw that were just really, really far apart. So I was just wondering if you would be able to comment on what you actually found when you were looking into this.
So I certainly don't deserve any of the credit because there's environmental companies that do these studies. I was not in charge of the actual studies, and I really don't want to claim to fully master it. So I'm not sure if Kevin Williams, who's our environmental analyst, is on the call, but if I understand your question correctly, that would be a question more for him.
Kevin's on.
Hi, Sarah. So as a planner who's been doing this for a long time and working in New York City, I appreciate the frustration of members of the community board regarding seeker documents. It's not a perfect framework to analyze, particularly environmental justice issues. And as you noted, the nature of the socioeconomic analyses, doesn't, paint a comprehensive picture of whether there's going to be displacement. And that's a very difficult thing to predict. So we have to work it within the framework of seeker. And one of the things that's different from our document than some of the other EASs is we took an account, and it's documented in the document, the other developments that are coming online, and evaluated the cumulative impact of that. And one of the unique things about seeker, however, is that the larger pool of units, the sort of, the smaller the drop you are in the pool, right? And so when you're analyzing the impact of a project, and in terms of it increasing rents and that sort of thing, it's very hard to sort of judge the practical impact. But here's what I would state. The project is going to be, offering significant affordability. It's significant affordability that's not present here. It's going to be, they're not displacing, I think there are 3 non-compliant residential units in the rezoning area. And so the fact is, in terms of evaluating indirect displacement, which is really the focus of the analyses, that by providing more development in an area, does it push out or induce others to depart? And, cumulatively, the population in this particular corridor is relatively shallow because it's an M1, right? And so there's either non-compliant residential or it's low density. And so, and the way that I look at this at the end of the day, when I look at the data and I look at the existing neighborhood, these developments are primarily focused, and I'm not going to state that there are not residential units on Pacific. I've worked on other rezonings in this area through the years, but the net benefit in terms of the affordable units coming on, and here they're quite significant in terms of the number of units, far outweighs the current housing stock in the ability to provide affordable housing. And so the only thing that I can say about this particular location, it's on a key corner in the neighborhood. It fronts the Atlantic corridor. It's not directly within the center portion of the Crown Heights neighborhood, where you have a lot of long-standing affordable housing, particularly the historic districts that are sort of further back in the Crown Heights area. So when I look geospatially at this location, really what's being established is a high density residential corridor focused on transit oriented type of development. And what's happening here is you're not only adding affordable housing, but you're creating mixed income communities. And so you're bringing people together, and there's a positive aspect to that. But to directly answer your question about how many people would be displaced, here there are 3 residential units, on the site. And so if you want me to tailor a response a little bit more.
Question, Kevin.
Well, the question.
We don't have any residential units on our site.
No, those are not, Ellie, those aren't part of your site.
Yeah.
Those are part of the soft sites in terms of what we had to analyze. We analyzed beyond your development, and we have to assume, inducement to do a conservative analysis.
Sarah, I wanted to clarify a question because I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're right. Sorry about that.
Sarah?
So the question was not so much, how many people are going to be directly displaced, because
yes,
it seems like that's much fewer with this than with the previous application, or indirectly displaced, because that's super hard to really know, even though, like, I could give you lots of anecdotal data about you know, because I organize tenants, like I could
Right.
give you lots of anecdotal data that you're just not going to have because you don't know specifically how like the building like 2 blocks away, how their landlord is behaving. I guess what I was asking about was from your study about the income differential, what you are expecting for the income ranges of the building that y'all want to build and versus the incomes in the surrounding area.
So I think to give a more a simpler interpretation of what Kevin said, because to put it in simpler terms, what I gathered is that the comparable rents in the area are mostly based on M1 buildings, which, as Kevin said, are most likely illegal dwellings or just much older buildings. So those are obviously going to be, towards a lower rent. So obviously, I would lie to you if I told you that we're going to be charging the same rents as a 1920 building, down the street that's an illegal dwelling. So, but by definition, since we're projecting to the larger units and cater towards more long-term tenants, I don't think we'll be shooting for like sky-high rents like some of these new buildings, because what COVID has taught me, taught a lot of people, is that the big issue with small units is too much turnover and therefore vacancy when we want to build a more, stable, fully leased building to like local residents, as opposed to just the constant turnaround of 35-40% studios that constantly get re-rented. So
Sarah, I can actually more directly answer that question. So table 2.5-3, is based on the rents in the area and the household incomes in the area. And basically what we did, using Street Easy and other socioeconomic, as a sort of rent analyses, and also looking at the socioeconomic analysis later, the American Community Survey, is we tried to establish what the low rent would be based off 30% of household incomes, so of the area-wide AMI, and then also the high rent, and that was listed as based on the high edge of the household income range. So where you have something that it's at like 130% down to 70% of the household income in the area, to indicate that bear in mind these are units that are sound attenuated, have central air conditioning, and yes, they it might not be a 500 square foot unit in like a pre-war building. So that there are a very solid range of incomes. 1350 for a studio, even in this market, in a high-end building is affordable for a household. Obviously how many people can fit in a studio household, but that was what the attempt here was, to capture what the MIH would allow for in terms of affordability for all the room sizes, and then what would the prevailing market meet in terms of the higher rent amount. And then of course it depends on what the MIH option is.
I don't know if that answers your question, but Kevin, I don't know if you're monitoring the chat. They also had a question about the CubeSmart site next to us, and the possibility for that to get built one day.
Right. We analyzed the CubeSmart as what's called a potential development site. Given I think the last environmental consultant tried to parse out what potential versus projected is, and the difference is projected is basically a site that's way under the FAR, not a new development, not a long-term commercial tenant. So to retrofit the CubeSmart, which has certainly not been designed to provide loads. It doesn't have central columns. It's an open space. It's partitioned. You would basically have to demo that building or do a comprehensive retrofit. And given that they have tenants with leases, on their storage spaces, and it's a new development, and presumably one that's financially viable, I would not. It was the agreement with city planning and my personal, understanding, given the investment that was put into the site, that that's unlikely to be developed for quite a long time.
Yeah, I
But
would also add that
we did include it in our analysis when we analyzed all the impact areas. We also looked at another projected development on site. So a very, very conservative analysis was performed for all of the lots in the rezoning area.
and I would just add also that it was built, what was it, 6 years ago?
It's very new.
Yeah, it wasn't built too long ago, and it's owned by a REIT. And this, if I'm not mistaken, is a 25-year lease. I think CubeSmart has a 25-year lease on the property anyway. So, I mean,
yeah, so all of those parts were considered very early on in the process to determine whether or not, it would be considered a projected or a potential. But we analyzed it as a potential. We didn't exclude it from the analysis and the rezoning.
Okay. So, this is a lot to think about, people. And I think you should put some more thought into pulling our options together. And as I mentioned earlier, it's the phoning and the writing and making sure that our representatives know what we need here. And I think that both of these applicants would be willing to work with us and with DCP if there is a neighborhood rezoning on the table. So we need to go after that money hard and heavy and see over the next few months if we can pull it in and make it happen. And we'll talk again, especially on the 11th. I think we have a special meeting to revisit some of these issues. So think long and hard, look at the materials, mark them up, come back with some action plans, and we can see what we can have happen here. There'll be, a plus and a minus on each one of the issues that are facing us. And we hope that we'll be able to work with the applicants productively as we have in the past, but people need to understand what's at stake and not come to full board meetings with arm waving and I don't know, or acting like a know nothing, because that just throws a monkey wrench into the gears if we're moving along towards a reasonable target for either side, or hopefully for both sides. So with that, unless there's something else we need to cover at 9:45, I ask for a motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. And we'll see each other next Thursday and again the following Monday. So please do your homework and come prepared. There are action plans that are available to us, and we'll be circulating that to the land use committee.
We see each other next on Monday, the 11th, no?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yes, before. Absolutely. You're right. You're right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so we're good. And thank everybody for coming, and see you Monday, the 11th.
Thanks, Ethel.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, good night.
Good night.